We are live. Holy crap. Thank
It
you
says
for your
live. It says live.
It's live. Thank you for your patience. Because I was getting very impatient. Folks, welcome to Talking Crit. I am at the moment half your hosts. Our other hosts will be running late, but joining us uh, what's that phrase, in memoriam res or some crap like that,
In
in the
memoriam.
middle of the action.
I'm still
Um,
alive. Oh, in media
I
race.
don't know.
Yeah, in media race. Yeah, we're media. Yeah, I'm in
In
media race.
media res. There we go. Yeah, there. And with me, as you can tell, is Nutty. Thank you. Chat up a storm. Why don't you? So, this is going to be one of the. Oh, I should actually make an announcement. There will be no live stream Friday night. Glenn will be not in the house.
Oh dear. How's
Glenn
Glenn
is
doing?
being dragged out of the house.
Oh,
Glenn's
he's
doing
okay.
fine. He's 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 got family obligations.
Of
So
course.
Friday's live stream is punching until Sunday night at 8 p.m. Just making
Oh,
that announcement now. I'll make the
well, hold
announcement
on. You're
later.
gonna do Friday's live stream on Sunday?
Yes.
Oh, I'm interested. I don't have much going on Sundays, so I guess I'm tuning
Oh
in this
well,
weekend.
there you go. Maybe Mike will be sitting in the third chair. You don't know. Maybe he'll be.
You never know. If I remember, I might. If you guys are talking about something that's interesting, that really gets me all right. Oh no, I got to get
Oh.
rant. I don't like to interrupt your show unless I have a rant. I gotta get ranted up, and if I'm not ranting, then I don't feel like interrupting your show. So yes. So unless you get to me where I'm ranting, I'm gonna let you guys roll by yourselves. So. Well, yeah, we got word from Jim. He's going to be a little late tonight. Our guest this week, Dirk Stanley, is going to be next week. Correct?
Next week. I was hoping Dirk was going to be this week. We had trouble communicating. The people are out and about. And number two, not everybody is like Mike and I, where we're attached to the social media on our phone constantly. So
like us,
Dirk Stanley will be Faraway Land will be on next week. We're working on many things.
Yeah,
And
we're gonna have Rachel Marsh in the next few weeks. Steve Marsh's daughter. She has her own adventure coming out with Frog Art Games, so we'd love to talk to her because she's really awesome. She's getting her doctorate in art and engineering at Texas A&M University, but she found the time to write a D&D adventure. So we're going to talk to her about that and some other stuff about gaming, what it's like to grow up as Steve Marsh's daughter and all that fun stuff. But we'll push that back another week. And we got stuff going on, man. We got all kinds of things going on. And I wish we had a crazy Watsy did something really stupid this week, Newsweek, but we don't really have that. I mean, they've done lots of stupid things. So don't get us wrong. And recently, nothing really recent, within I don't know, within 5 days.
no. I mean, I'm looking at, like, I guess just over a week ago they released the player's handbook. We talked about that at Gen Con. So I mean, this literally, folks, I got a secret for you. This is your live stream. You got questions for Mike and I or Jim later. This is where you throw them out. Not throw them out like you throw it out with the bathwater. I mean, I'm just saying it. You throw it out there and you ask the questions. By the way, Fugly, huge thank you. Fugly has designed and donated the tankies for next year. By the way, Mike, our very own James Spahn said that the Tanky Award, the tanker, should be for the best RPG. He goes, we should have a shot glass for the best adventure because adventures are one shots.
Right.
And the outhouse mimic is for the worst game. But then he goes, but nobody will ever want to claim that prize. I go, that's great. Then
True.
it'll stay on my shelf year after year. We'll just take a picture of it, present it, and put it back in the display.
Are we really that into gaming enough to where you can say we know the worst adventure or the worst game? Because we don't. We kind of, we're kind of set in our old school ways. We don't pay attention to a lot of the new stuff. I mean, we could read a review and somebody could say this is terrible, but I don't know if we're really going to know what's the worst.
All right. So then how about this? The worst adventure will be determined by the tavern's community. We'll put up a poll.
Okay. Or worst game, because a game can come out that's just absolutely unplayable and just like, oh dear God, this is just awful.
So we leave that up to the
we don't have to feel bad about ripping. I don't know. Do we feel bad about ripping people or not? I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Actually, we could run the poll in multiple places and then collate the results, like North Texas Facebook, the Tavern's Facebook, the Tavern's Discord. There's some overlap, but there's
probably going to be a little tongue in cheek. I mean, we don't want to make fools of anybody. We're going to do it kind of tongue in cheek, and they have the Razzies every year, right? They have the Razzies. For those who don't know, they have the Razzies like now 30 years now. The Razzies are the worst. They're like the opposite of the Academy Awards. And sometimes, what's always awesome is when a actress or actor will come and accept their Razzie, because they know they're in a stink bomb. They know the movie they were in was just garbage, and so they earn respect by going there and accepting their Razzie. Like, hey, the worst actor. Right. And I'm trying to remember. I know people that have done that before. They've like, okay, you're right. I was in an absolute god awful bomb of a movie, and I'm going to go ahead and accept my Razzie. I mean, look, they get paid. They got paid. It's not like they didn't get paid. So like, oh, I got paid for it. I don't care.
Right.
So maybe whoever gets the tanky will be like, okay, whatever. I could have done better. It just didn't work out very good.
I got paid. No, maybe they didn't.
John, we have already been doing Cast of Crusades for a year now. We've been supporting it. It's kind of an experiment. We've been supporting Cast of Crusades for a while now. If you go to our Frog Out Games page, you will see that a lot of the newer items also have a Castles and Crusades version for them. So we have someone on staff actually. His name is Laramie, and everybody knows who Laramie is. If you've been to con, he has a mohawk, and he's awesome. He's an awesome dude. He has been doing our CNC conversions. So yes, we've been doing CNC for a while. It's not the most popular system out there, but it's got a very loyal following and a very loyal audience, and it plays a lot like old school. You can if you play 5e or 3e or whatever, you can figure 3e, I guess, more than 5e, you can figure it out. So yes, we've been doing CNC for a while. Just waiting to see what Watsy's going to do. Are they going to? And now I think that we know what Watsy's going to do. I think we'll probably go back to just doing what I call regular 5e, and we're not going to worry about all the bells and whistles of the new kid on the block 5e, at least for a while. I think we're going to have enough people playing regular 5e, and then I also think that it's probably easy enough to bring it up to speed if you play the newer 5e.
Well, I mean, they themselves are saying the old adventures are compatible with the new rules.
They're saying that, Eric, but I've heard different from people. I've heard that there's
I've heard different too. I'm just saying this is Watsy's company line. And if you want to buy a bridge, I understand the Brooklyn Bridge can be had for a song and a dance.
All right, check for that.
There you go.
This check will not bounce. So I'm going to write a check to that. Awesome.
You can rub a check.
Yeah. So I think the rule book coming out, I think, is going to jumpstart the industry in a way, in terms of there's a lot of companies on hold, and a lot of people were just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, so to speak. They wanted to see what the rule, how much the rules are going to change before they went ahead with projects. And like I said, I have a unique output on input on this, having some stock in Frog Out Games and seeing how we do stuff and being present for meetings, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, it's a real issue for a lot of companies that do, that don't just do their house system. Now, most companies have taken to doing their house system. Obviously, you have Goodman Games are doing DCC. Troll Lord Games do, Castle Crusades, and so on and so on. So for a lot of people, it's not. But the people that do 5e adaptations, it was a big deal because how much was the new 5e rules going to change? And a lot of the changes are cosmetic. But as we mentioned here before, and Eric, and we've talked about, Eric especially mentioned this. They've said all along, oh, you're gonna be able to use the old rules, but as we see, it's not. You're not going to want to use the old rules.
Right.
Because the new rules are going to give you more kick-ass characters and more powerful characters, and characters can do different things. So they're telling you, yeah, you can play a 5e Druid Ranger Dryad, but the new 5e, the 5e plus. By the way, we got to think of a new name for this, Eric. What is the new game system going to be called?
I call it D&D. I call it D&D Forever. Because
D&D Forever? Okay.
Yeah, the Forever Edition, because they're claiming that this is, and they could be right about this. They're claiming there's never going to be another edition of D&D. Well, that's fine if all you do is constantly update the digital version of the rules.
Yeah. Yes, and which they'll be able to do. And but by the way, we didn't touch on that last week. We were getting towards we went way over last week. We probably won't do that this week, but man, we went way over because we hit some really hot topics towards the end, and Jim was fired off cylinders. But one of the things we talked about is the fact that the hardcover rules you're getting now, the rules you're getting, they may be the last ones you ever see for 5e, because from here on out, they're just going to change their online PDFs, or they're not PDFs. I'm sorry. They're online rules. That's all they're going to do. They're not going to, every time they make a change, they're not going to give you a new book. There's no point in that. I mean, because they could decide tomorrow they want to take 2 lines out of the player's handbook here and a paragraph out here and another 3 descriptions out here, and they could just do it. And then you go online and it's done. It's there. So that's what, we've entered the world of 1984 here. They're going to alter stuff as we're reading it. The rules are going to change. You're going to be talking to your DM going, well, my character can do this, this, and this. He's going to pull it up online and say, no, I can't. Not there anymore. Sorry.
Well, it's in my book. Yeah, that's not the
book says it.
You're supposed to have your laptop in front of you the game.
Yep. It's a brave new world.
On D&D Beyond.
It is absolutely going to be a brave new world.
Yeah. Because listen, we saw the future when they changed the files on D&D Beyond for the current edition of 5e. When they went in and started rewriting lore, taking out words. Oh, slavery's a bad word. Got to remove that. Uncivilized. No, not uncivilized. Can't
primitive.
Have that word.
Nobody's primitive. Ah!
No, primitive is the wrong connotations. They're just underprivileged in technology. I mean, but they're going in, when they started changing all that stuff, you knew the future of D&D was these changes. And they're not, they made these changes at the end of 5e. Why do you bother making the changes at the end of 5e? Because you're trying to change the mindset of your players as they transition to D&D 2024, D&D Forever. And that is part of the process there. Part of that process was bring the old players into that new think. It's a new think.
Yeah. It's not for us. And we've said that before. It's not for people our age. It's not for people 40 and over. Scott says, I can't see them patching PDFs randomly, but they can do it in an expansion book and make them pay for it. They may do that every 3 or 4 years, but they're not going to do that every year. There's no point in doing that. Look, that's why you're paying for the online service, is to see all the changes as they happen. That's why they want to get you on the VTT and get you online, so you can already pay to see all that stuff. So no, they're not going to issue an expansion book every year. They might every few years. They might say, I don't know what they would call it.
They might. You
think they would do it every? I don't think they would do it every year.
Unearthed Arcana.
Is there going to be enough every year?
If they could do a 64-page hardcover book, charge you $44.99 for the 64 pages of updates. And by the
Uh-huh.
way, all those updates you're going to need if you're playing an organized play. If you're in the Adventurers League,
Yep.
you're going to need the officially updated rules. So there will be a market for it. And it's going to be overpriced. Why is it going to be overpriced? Because they're the only ones that can supply that. They're not.
Absolutely.
This is the official. If you're going to be a Luddite and not move on to the digital world, that's how they're going to. It's not going to be a large print run. I doubt it. But I can see it.
Okay. Well, I defer to your experience there. I figured why would they do that? They're just going to say, you need to buy the service and go online to see the changes. What's going to help you out?
Listen, I think that's where their focus is going to be, but they want to milk every penny, every dollar out of every player. And let's be honest, what rules do players purchase? The core rules. You're going to make this the core rules. This way, you're still getting those Luddites paying you something every year. So I can see it. I really can.
What if they do something? Oh, Don just brought this up. What if they? Excuse me. Oh man, I swallowed that drink wrong. Whiskey. I'm not used to whiskey anymore. I haven't been drinking during the week. What if they just say, "Yeah, we're going to have some new stuff. It's going to be $9.99." Or we have this really cool new class called the Dragon Slayer, and it's only official though if you buy the update, and then you get the information because you're not going to have the information to run this class otherwise.
Okay, so let's listen. We've already agreed that the reason why WotC is swinging to digital is because they want to monetize the players, right? They want to.
Right.
When was the last time
they're under monetized because they figured out the DM's buying all the product and the players aren't buying enough? Exactly.
Okay. When was the last time the rights holder for D&D understood how to monetize the players?
Never.
No, they did.
Or no, they did. They did it. When did they?
Chewy. The complete players handbooks.
You're right. The splat books. Absolutely. Because I've been a DM since.
Yes.
Oh yeah. I've been a DM since '78, and we played 1E, then we switched to 2E, and I used to run a very open game from about '89 through '94, '95 or so, where one of those games where just anybody could show up at the local game store. We had a thing there, and people would show up because we ran a game of Undermountain, and the Undermountain game was whoever showed up, your characters went to Undermountain, and so it was a different crew every week, right? We played it every week, and here's what I had to deal with every week, Eric. Somebody walks in and they've got a splat book under their arm. I'm like, oh boy, I know what's going to happen next.
Complete book of elves.
I want to bring my elf singer, blade runner.
My blade singer. Can I bring in my blade singer?
It's an official class because look, it's in this splat book. It's an official class. And then I would have to reiterate that. Okay, I understand that, but my game, to prevent total anarchy, I've limited it to these races. Oh, I had to take away Drow after a while because all they want to do is play a Drow. Remember when Drist was king and everybody wanted.
I'm a lawful good dark elf. I'm a ranger and I've got a panther who's got a name that nobody can pronounce, but it's got lots of
we had one guy that would show up for our games, an African American guy. He wanted to play a Drow. I said, sure. That was the first and only time I did it because he really was passionate about playing it. And he even gave me the reason he wanted to play it. I'm like, you know what? I'm good. But when anybody else came in, I said, no, we've got one. We've already got our Drow. We've got one. That's it. No more. The odds are, 1 in a million. You're going to have one that's good. This guy's the good. And no, we don't have any more. And I would have to tell people. And here's the list of races we have. Here's the list of classes we have. You have to go off that list just to prevent total anarchy because I'm not doing a party of 15 different player character races and or classes. And so I had to, but you'd always know it. But when they came in and they had that book under their arm, you're like, Oh boy, complete book of Paladins. Oh boy, complete book of Rangers. I know what's coming
Yeah.
now. And they would have min-maxed the best one, obviously, the one that has the least issues, the least downside, the most upside, right?
Right. Well, the
And
class, the kit. Sorry, the kit that
yeah, the kit.
has drawbacks that are social drawbacks,
Minimal, yes, minimal.
drawbacks.
Role playing, you're not going
to. These are things that the players. These aren't like negatives to anything that's going to affect gameplay. This is all stuff that the player has to embrace, and they're not going to.
Nope, I dealt with that quite a bit, Eric. That was, like I said, the way I dealt with it is we had a very strict list of what you could do, and I would hand it to him and say, "Here's what we have. Sorry," or I would do this thing like, "Okay, I'll look at it. We'll look at it, and then maybe next time." Hoping they wouldn't show up again, or if they'd show up, I'd say, "Oh, I haven't looked at it yet." So I would just keep pushing it back. Now if it was a player that I respect the role playing abilities, I might let them run something that was interesting if they had a good take on it. Like the guy that wanted to run the Dro, he had a good take on it. But most people didn't have a good take on it. They just wanted to min max. They just wanted the class with the least issue, the least downside, the most upside. And so I would say, okay, spin me a tale here. Like one guy wanted to run a samurai once. He had a pretty good rationale. And I thought, okay, no problem. Your character will be, we're not going to call him a samurai because they don't have samurai in this world, but it'll be as very much as a samurai would be.
Right.
Because he wanted to use the samurai. He just liked samurais. He liked that class. So that was okay. He just liked that character. That's why I wanted to run it. It wasn't because it was min-max. It was just because, samurais are cool. I love Japanese manga because they even had manga back then. This is the early 90s. They had manga back then.
Oh, yeah.
He loved Lone Wolf and Cub was like his favorite comic, which is a cool comic if you haven't ever read it. And so he was really into that. So I was like, okay, well, let's work it out. Okay, what kind of weapon do you use? You want to use a katana, right? Yeah, you kind of, okay, you can't use long swords, short swords, two-handed swords. Okay, I'm okay with that. So that means if you lose your katana, you've got to have the guy make you one in town. And so he went along with everything I said. So we got to do this. You come from a faraway land to the east. What was the land in what was the quasi-Asian land in Forgotten Realms? That's what we played.
Karatur or something like that.
Karatur. You come from Karatur. So basically we had a Karatur character and it's okay. It worked out. It worked out good. My brother had a Karatur samurai. He wanted to run one up too. He thought that was cool. And by the way, his character, Kwai Chang, Kwai Chang was his character's name. He's famous to this day, 30 years later in our group. And the reason why isn't a good reason. The reason why is he, at about 10th level, he had about 50 hit points because he rolled quite a few ones in there when he was rolling for his hit points. You rolled a die 10, and I think his rolls, so I always give everybody maximum hit points first level. So he had 10, then it was like he rolled a 1, then a 2, then a 1, then a 2. And so he's like 5th level with 20 hit points. And then he finally started running better. I also, by the way, that's when I changed my rule about hit points. I tell my characters, you can either roll for hit points or you can take the mean. If you're a fighter, you can either roll or take a 5. Thief, you can either roll or take a, whatever, a 3 or whatever. So I that way I don't feel guilty about it. Because if you're rolling, you get a 1. I gave you the option. You could have had the mean. And the campaign I'm running now, I've had a few people contemplate it, but they've actually rolled pretty good. So they're confident that if they rolled a 1, it wouldn't ruin their character too bad. Well, and I did it because Robert's samurai was so terrible that eventually about 5th level, I said, look, if you just want to take the 5 every time, I'm happy with that because you're just chasing numbers you're never going to hit now.
Well, here's how Joe the lawyer runs it in his 2E game. And it's interesting. And you can tell, and I know Joe likes to theoretically gamble because when I ran years ago when I ran Rapinathic, when he found the demon slot machines, that was it. The campaign was there in that room. But this is what Joe does: you roll your hit dice. We'll use a fighter for example. You roll your hit dice. You roll a 3. He'll go to you like fucking Satan. He'll go, listen, you think you're lucky? You can roll a D8. But you get the new result. If you roll higher, you get the new. So now, Now you roll another 3. Maybe you roll another 3. He'll
Boy.
go, well, listen. You can try again, but now you got to roll a d6.
Oh no, this is oh
And so,
oh.
so you
So you roll a
really
six. You think,
have,
well, my odds are I could roll a six. I rolled
yeah,
two
if
threes.
you
That's
roll a 1 on your d10, you're like, yeah, give me that d8. But man, if you roll like a 4, you're like, oh, this
no.
could go downhill pretty quickly. So
I'm risk averse. I'm risk averse. I would just take the regular than rather than just get my egg all over my face and keep rolling
well,
worse.
like I said, if you roll a 1 or a 2 on a d10, all right, I'll
Oh,
roll a
you want
d8.
to roll? Yeah, you definitely re-roll then. But if you start rolling
If I
those
had like,
median
yeah,
numbers, I don't
yeah,
know.
if I had like a 4, I'd be like, no, it's okay, man. I'll keep that 4.
Stay away, Satan. I'm not listening to your preamble here. I'm not gonna.
John had a question about has anybody announced support for the new edition? Um, I'm sure there are some companies, but most of the larger
As we-
companies have their own rule set these days, right?
Yeah,
Goodman
that's a smart way to go. Yeah, well,
has
I'm going to announce a non. Can I announce some non-support?
yeah.
We said this last year. Gary and I we talked about it, and David talked about it too. We're not allowing the new edition to be scheduled in any games at North Texas, and the reason is because we started out as an old school convention, and we kind of got away from that because we said, look, 5e is the most popular version of the game ever created.
Mhm.
It was really hot at the time. We said, okay, you could bring 5e into play. 5e is still a very popular choice at North Texas. But with all the rigor and the fact they tried to cancel the OGL, which
Yep.
and Eric knows this, most of the people at our convention rely on the OGL to publish their game system. They basically tried to put our friends out of work. Is what they tried to do. They tried to put them out of work. We just said, you know what, we're going to go back to our roots, concentrate on systems that are canceled, old systems like 5e is now, and we're going to allow the 5e books, but none of the new rules. We're not. Look, if you want to bring it and play at 5, but we're not going to schedule it. We will not schedule anything from D&D Forever. It's not on the schedule. Not possible to be scheduled. If you want to run a game D&D Forever using the D&D Forever books, that's your deal. But we're telling people you cannot advertise it as a D&D Forever game. You have to advertise it as a 5e game. So we're just moving away from it because it's not the we don't want to do it.
The bait and switch.
We don't want to give them any more oxygen.
I was getting D&D 2014, and I show up, and he's like, "No, we got more powerful characters." Oh, your
I don't
character.
think a lot of DMs will do that. I don't think a lot of DMs will do that to their players unless you want to
I don't
riot on
think
your
so.
hands.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are perfectly happy with 5e. You can run 5e. Everybody's going to have the rule books by then. Heck, you can probably get them cheap now. Go buy the 5e rule books cheap. So yeah, if you want to try out, look, North Texas is probably not the con for you if you want to run D&D Forever. It just isn't. It's probably not the con for you anyway. So we're sticking to old school systems, older systems, out of print games, or stuff like that. We're not going to allow D&D Forever games be scheduled in North Texas. So that's a vote of non-confidence. If you want to vote of non-confidence, I don't think most conventions will do that because I think they're going to want to get they're going to get sucked into the WotC brain trust there, and they're going to definitely want people to play the new hot game. But we're more old school than most of those conventions, Eric. We do things old school, and at this point we consider 5e a game that's been put out of business, put to pasture. So that fits into our mold. That's an old school game. My cat will not leave me. Thank Lord. All right, here you go. Everybody can see you. There you go. Everybody
there you go. So when it came to the 2E splat books, I was the DM for 2E in my gaming group, and I had ordered. God, I had ordered from the Dungeon Hobby Shop. Remember when that was part of DSR?
Oh yeah.
And remember, this is 2E, so I'm assuming Ernie wasn't working there, but somebody was. And I ordered one splat book, I forget which one it was, and a poster. And 2.5 weeks later, there's this big heavy box in front of my door when I come home. I'm like, what the hell is this? and it's from the Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum. And inside is one of every splat book, and
Oh
no,
boy.
and no poster. And then I start getting
They
answer machine messages.
they screwed that one up big time, didn't they? Wow.
Oh yeah, and I get the this I don't remember the guy's name, but it's like this is whoever from the Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum. You have to ship all that stuff back now. I'm like, so my roommate at the time was in law school, so I was
He
like,
told you the
hey,
law, which is you
he
received
goes, Ken,
unsolicited merchandise,
yeah, he goes, don't
which
answer.
means you do not have to return it.
He goes,
No.
don't return that phone call. He goes, did you? He goes, did you sign anything? I go, no, it was left at the door. So they don't even know if you actually
No.
received it. I go,
As
no.
Fugly said, it is federal law. It is the law of mail. Anything you receive unsolicited is all yours, baby. So
So,
yeah, that was Christmas in July, man, for
oh my,
little
well,
for
that
little Eric
also
Tinkar.
was, I started lending these books out to oh, hey, I've got an elf. Oh, yeah, here, borrow the elf book. Then all of a sudden, Blade Singer. I'm like, I hadn't read it yet.
Oh
And then I
no.
was like, oh my effing God, what did I do?
Yeah.
What did I
No
do?
Blade Singer. No Blade
Oh,
Singers.
no. But, and Mike and I found out years later
Hmm.
that I'm guessing after the first 4 core splat books for the
Right.
first, the fighter, cleric,
Fighter,
magic,
thief, priest, and mage. Yes.
yeah. After those, um, it was, hey, these books make money. Don't waste your time play testing it. Just write it. And
We got it from the mouth of Steve Winter, that's who told us this, is that we did
yeah,
not play test past that because you had to come up with a book. They're like, we need a book on who wants to do the complete Ranger handbook. I think that was Rick Swan or whatever. So Rick had to sit there and come up with 18 different kits, and
yeah,
he's not going to play test them. He's just going to say what sounds cool.
yeah.
Okay, here's the feral the ranger, the city ranger, the underground ranger, exactly what you expect, and he's going to give it some cool powers and this and that. But these are not play tested. None of the at the
No,
point. And, honestly, some of the original ones probably weren't play tested either. But if you remember, Eric, the first 4 flat books were not overpowering classes.
no.
That they would give you like a +1 something, like you said, you have like the samurai. Okay, well, if he uses a katana, he gets a +1. I mean, they weren't overpowered. As time went on, they had to make these classes more unique and more interesting and cooler, and so they started adding powers, and things got
And
out
they
of
were
hand real
geared
quick.
for the multi-class, like complete book of halflings and gnomes. Now that tells you something about how the undersized character races were disrespected when they couldn't even get their own damn book. They're like, we got to combine it just to sell enough copies to justify this. But
Yep.
complete book of humanoids.
But they were very popular, man. I'm sure they made them a lot of money by the frequency they came out, which is pretty much
Oh
one a
my
year or
God.
2 a year.
Oh
They
my
were,
God. Probably.
every class had their own.
I think it felt almost seasonal that they were coming out, and on top
Yeah.
of that, then you had the DM books, like you had the ones that were the
Creative campaigning.
setting,
Yeah.
yeah. You had the creative campaigning ones, and then you had the villains
It's really
book,
good.
and
Yeah.
then you had the setting books, right? Like if you want to do
Mhm.
a Celt campaign, if you want to
Yeah, the
do
Celtic one, the Viking one. Yeah, they had all those too. Middle Ages, which were really interesting to read. I always thought a lot of those would make a really good, like maybe mini campaign of like 5 or 6 episodes. I like the Greek one because back in the old days there was a retro clone called Minotaurs and something I can't remember, and it was the premise was, what if D&D had took a hard steer into Greek and Roman
Minotaurs and
mythology.
Mazes, I think it was.
Mazes and Minotaurs, that was it, Eric.
Mazes and
And
Minotaurs.
it was presented as if it was a lost version. It never was. It was actually written in the 80s or the 90s, I mean, or whatever the aughts, whatever came out.
Right.
But it was a really good premise. The premise was, what if it just took the Greek and the legendary classical monsters, and all the games were set in instead of a medieval framework like the Tolkien, kind of area. No, this is set back in the Greek, Middle Ages type environment, which I thought was a really, really cool idea because that fits the milieu of Dungeons and Dragons quite well. And what if we just did it that way? So I always liked, so TSR had a book about, I think it was the Greek setting, or I don't know what they called it, the ancient Greece setting, whatever. They did a pretty good job with that. And that would, I think, I always thought that would have been fun to run a mini campaign. Characters don't have a lot of the advantage. They don't have horses with stirrups. They don't have, they don't have all these things that you get.
It's Bronze Age, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. You have Bronze Age stuff instead of, you don't have steel. You have all these changes, maybe your character's an ex-gladiator and he's got, the mages were very limited. They could mostly predict the future type thing because, that was the big magic back in Greece, was soothsayers and
true, yeah.
seers. And so they could give you bonuses, I think, to attack and stuff. So it wasn't like they threw flashy spells like fireball or anything like that, which is interesting because, you don't realize that mages overbalance the party until, like right now, the party we're playing right now, it's an all dwarven party. There's no dwarven mages in the party. There's an MP. There's a one player character has a mage, and they hire NPC mages to accompany them. And you realize how much magic does for the campaign because the first few combats they had, if they had these hired mages that were like first and second level, and the thing they told them is you have to know a sleep spell. We're not going to hire you because somebody would come up, like I'd roll up these random mages, like I don't know a sleep spell, not hired. Next. And so they only hired the 4 or 5 low level, and like their job is all your job is throw a sleep spell when you tell you to throw a sleep spell. That's it. Throw your one spell and run to the back, it will protect you. And you don't realize how much help that is until you have a party with no mages in it, which they were. They were all dwarven fighters, clerics, and thieves and stuff. And they would run into 25 goblins. Well, then the 2 or 3 sleep spells later, you're only fighting 15 goblins. That's more reasonable, especially when you're first level and you can die easily. So yeah, the Greek campaign always seemed interesting to me because you didn't have those flashy magic just throwing their fireballs. It was more relying on the sword arm of the fighter. So it was interesting. I always like those. Like I said, the settings books. I guess we're never going to live long enough to run all the campaigns we'd love to run someday. So
no,
I'm like, I can play once a month.
I have to download myself into AI and then have AI run the campaigns with AI PCs, and then it can tell me how it went, and I'll be happy, right? Theoretically, Foxtrot was like, they got the last laugh by messing with your game. I guess nothing is truly. All right.
By the way, I didn't tell you this. I didn't tell you this earlier, Eric, but I want to debut a new feature on our show this week.
Ooh.
But I want to wait till Jim gets here and see if Jim shows up. If he doesn't show up, we'll do it anyway. So I'm gonna get a little personal here in my personal life. My wife retired last month. Congratulations, Christy. The love of my life, my anchor, retired. She's older than me because I like older women. What can I say? I'm into older women. And so I'm still several years from what I would consider retirement. But I had made promises years and years ago that when I get to be a certain age, I'm going to start selling my stuff off. Because at this point, I have 2 storage facilities full of stuff. I have a closet full. I have an attic full. It's everywhere. Okay, it's everywhere in the house. I said, look, this is all for my retirement. I'm going to start selling this stuff when we retire so we can pay for whatever medical, whatever. Because she's not going to make as much money, and she's not on Social Security and her pension. She's not making as much money as she used to. I never made a lot of money. Let's face it. And so, okay, that's a great thing to say when you're 40. Or 35. You can say that and say, it's so far away. It's never going to happen. Keep buying this shit. Keep throwing it and piling it up. Keep doing it. And then I turn around the other day, and then I turned 61 this year. And I'm like, oh, okay. I guess the day has come, Eric. Well, actually, I said this last year when I turned 60. I said, I guess the day has come.
Yeah.
So I have been judiciously pouring through my collection and pruning and looking, have I used this in 15 years? Is this worth a lot of money? Do I need this? Yada, yada, yada. So every week I've been listing. So I'm going to have a feature of the show every week. We'll talk about, it's called What is Mike selling this week? It's going to be, and I'm going to try to pull something interesting that the people are going to like to look at and say, oh, that's really cool. I don't have that. What's the story behind it? So we're going to do a little short. And like I said, if Jim was here, it's great because Jim is, as we know, Jim is a big collector also, and he's an auctioneer at Gen Con. By the way, you can find the YouTube. I watched it this week. It was the most expensive items in the Gen Con auction. It's about 20-minute long video. It's really good. It shows you how you can see how the big spenders play. Gary says dibs on me basic. I've got some alien figures, Gary. I'll talk to you about that later if you want to. I've got some of those miniature, like those old school alien miniatures. I thought I had them right here, but they're someplace else. If you're interested, Gary, they're yours. But yeah, so I want Jim to be here too. But if he doesn't get here in an hour, so I'll do it anyway. I've got 2 or 3 items here that I'm going to put up on eBay or sell this week, and I'll try to pull something interesting every week. Not that with the thought I'm going to sell it to you guys. I just want to show you guys this is some cool stuff in my collection that you probably don't. So, okay, I'm going to do something right now. What the hell? You guys are so sweet. I love you guys so much.
Hold on. Why does that look from?
This is an Apple. Oh dear. A full color 3-dimensional maze with variable complexity came out from TSR in the year of our Lord 1980. 1980. This is a computer game playable with oh dear. It's playable with Apple computer. This is an Apple game compatible with the Apple II computer with DOS 3.3. The system inventory. Let me tell you, this cover by Elmore has no relation to the graphics you will see within, which look like this.
Oh my gosh! Oh, hey, actually, it's a pretty good minotaur for back then.
This is still sealed in the original shrink. They sell so seldomly; it's hard to even get a price on them. I've been tracking them for years. They came up with 4 games back in 1980 for the Apple. They came up with 4 different games. One was Dungeon. They had the board game Dungeon playable. I think one was Fight Disguise, and I can't remember what the last one was. But that's one of the I looked at the other day and thought I probably need to get this slabbed and sold or something to do, or I don't know, do something with it.
Will they slab box like that?
They will. They'll slab. They slab video games. Video
okay.
games is a huge, collectible thing right now. A lot of the old Nintendo games, and just the old stuff. Look at some of the price on that. Sometimes it is nuts. I mean, some of that stuff. Some of the old Atari games still in the pack. They have to still be in the package. They've got it. So you could never actually played it. But yeah, that's the kind of thing I had in when I was cleaning out my office for my project. That's the kind of thing I found and thought maybe this needs to be sold. Now, I'd love to have Elmore sign it and then sell it. So maybe I'll keep it around and wait till I get to see Elmore again someday. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. I'll pull something like that out every week and we'll talk about it. But yeah, that was the computer that they did. They had a very early jump into computer games in the early 80s, and then of course they had a much more successful swim when they hooked up with SSI and did the gold box games. That was when that stuff took off. Remember how big Pools of Radiance was at the time? That was huge. Oh my gosh.
Mike,
Pools of Radiance in the gold box. Yeah.
You remember how much fun Hills Far was?
You could take your character and level them up.
Actually, jack or shit with that game. It was it was barely a Twitch game. It made me, however, want to see how far I could throw a disc. Because I was like, this is a waste of money.
Pool of Radiance, for all its glitches and issues, and it would stop, and sometimes you'd be in the middle of this giant combat with 500 gnolls, and it would just go and turn off, and you're like, and then you'd have to turn it back on, and then you're at the opening of the cave again. You're like, you gotta be kidding me,
right?
Man, I tell you what, I can't tell you how many hours I wasted on Pools of Radiance.
Definitely.
Man, that was it was, to me, that was the greatest video game ever published, ever. It was so good. And I even like
the book. I even liked the book, and the book sucked.
The
but
Clue
I liked
book. Well, they had. Well, you mean the book, the Jim Ward book? Yeah, no, the Clue book was awesome too because the Clue book you run into clues and say go to page whatever. Remember, some of the clues were fake clues because if you just wanted to read through the Clue book, oh, I know everything that's going to happen now. They had fake clues in there that were never actually referred to in the the adventure. Yeah, that was. Boy, I tell you, I love that game. I played that game. I had an Apple IIe that my mom had brought home from work, and I went out to half price books or a half price computer game place, and I bought Pool of Radiance probably 1990, and I played that game for hours. Probably for a while, I was playing it 6-7 hours a day. I was just so fascinated by how cool that game was. And then they came out with the rest of they had a whole trilogy of pool games. Then they had the Dragonlance games. This is all using the gold box. They had Secret of the Silver Blades. Remember that one? That was a spin-off. And they had, like you said, they had Hills Far. Oh God, there was at one point there was a ton of them. And I played all those. I even played the Buck Rogers games. They had
I played the Buck Rogers game on Genesis, and that's the only gold box game that I completed that one quickly, and I was surprised without a clue book. It must have been.
You never played any of the. You never played the pools. You didn't play any of the pools.
I did. Games. I did play them, but I don't know if I think I finished the first one. I'm not even sure if I finished the second one, because they were hard. Buck Rogers wasn't hard. Buck Rogers was easy. But I played them on my Commodore 64, and what would annoy. And by the way, the gold box games were the ones that I would actually go out and buy. This is the era. Right, where you could, you'd be getting like Ultima 1 and 2 and 3 from somebody who got it from somebody who got it from somebody, and they would double side the disc so that they could put the game on it for you. I never finished an Ultima game because I had none of the rules, didn't know what the hell I was doing. But the gold box games were great. But what I would hate, because they had copy protection. Mike, do you remember the copy protection?
Oh, yeah. It was that little wheel. You had the little wheel, right?
And when they didn't have the wheel, you had to have the instruction booklet. It depended on the game. And it would be go to page, and on screen, it would say page 34, paragraph 2, line 3, fourth word.
Right.
So that was their way of making sure you weren't going to loan out the book. Right? If you were going to give somebody the game, you give them the game.
Yep. So we had a local computer store that would loan you games, and they would, part of the thing you had to sign was you weren't going to copy the game. Wink, wink.
Wink.
And so you could check out the game for a week. And so of course what everybody did was you of course got the game, you ran a copy of it, so you had the disc and you brought it back. But the problem with the gold box games, they had the copy protection where they had this little wheel you had to roll, and so you'd come to a part of the game, it would say to go on you have to do the password is wheel 1 is here, wheel 2 is here, is wheel 3 is here. So you'd roll them, and there would be a word there, and then you type in the word. And if you didn't have that, you couldn't play the game. You would get stuck, and you had to have that. And so that was a pretty sneaky way of saying you can copy this game, but it's not going to do you a bit of good unless you have the little wheel that you get from purchasing the game.
Right, and you have to remember too. Back then, you couldn't. Now you make your own photocopies. We're talking the era when a photocopy was 10 cents a page. Okay. So you're not taking this wheel apart. It wasn't made to be taken apart. So if you were going to do it, because you owned a copy and you were now distributing this to your friends, and you had to go and make. It was ridiculous, So people were not. We forget in the modern era how easy it is to make a photocopy. I mean, I was blessed. My father worked for the phone company. I would give him my goldenrods, and he would run off like 100 copies of only the front side. It wouldn't be double-sided, but the front side of all those goldenrods for the different classes. And I was the king of my gaming group. I'd give them out because otherwise goldenrods were expensive. WotC knew how to make. Sorry, TSR knew how to make money.
Oh yeah,
they certainly did.
Yeah, I back then you didn't. Nowadays, if I need a character sheet, I just go online and I download one because there's some really good ones download. I use one that Tom Tullis did actually right now. But yeah, back then, if you wanted a cool character sheet, you had to run copies of them, and they made sure they were in colors that didn't copy very good, right? The gold
Yep.
sheets or the green sheets, where you try to. Back then, your photocopiers were not. They're not smart photocopiers like now, where you could just put anything on there and it copies. You couldn't copy gold sheets or green sheets or
Well,
blue
you
sheets.
could do the
Yeah,
gold.
a little bit.
My father would adjust the darkness. They were very usable.
So
They
we'd
weren't
have we'd have
perfect,
people type them out. We'd have people type them out. They would like using a typewriter.
right?
Then you would run 100 copies of that, and then you'd have a cool sheet front. Then you had to do front and back. And luckily, I worked at a bank in the '80s, so I had unlimited use of photocopier. And I used to, oh my god, the amount of illegal copies I made was staggering. Staggering. I used to copy my whole Dragon magazines because I didn't want to read. I didn't, I wanted all the monster pages. I wanted all the spell book pages. I wanted all the. Remember Leonard Lakofka's article. What did he call it? I can't remember. But he always had these really cool rules changes you could use.
Uh-huh.
Lehman's Tiny Hut. Lehman's Tiny Hut. And so, yeah. Oh, yeah. I had all that stuff copied. But yeah, we'd also do our own character sheets. We'd just type them up, and you'd have to type a lot. Oh, I made a mistake. Start typing the next one. But you'd have people type them. Of course, nowadays it's ridiculous how easy you can do those. But this is what it was like in the old days, kiddies.
Yes, Boogly, New York prices. These are the prices you paid if you
Mm-hmm.
went down to like your 5 and 10 or your local whatever general purpose store.
Right, right.
They had a photocopy machine. It was 10 cents a page,
Jeez, that's crazy
paid
talk.
paid in advance because they knew they had a monopoly on this shit. This is
I think ours was like our local print store was 2 or 3 cents, which even then that added up. So, and
yeah,
plus you couldn't. I remember one time I showed up at the local print store with like a stack of dragons, and so I waited in line and started doing my copies. And then at a certain point, I started looking behind me. There's like 5 people behind me, and they're not happy, and they're looking at my stack of dragon magazines. I'm thinking, this is not the best way to do this. So I was like, okay, well, I'm through. And that's when I said, oh, I could bring it up to work at the bank and just do it in the off hours after everybody leaves, and I'm
there you go.
golden. They don't keep track of that stuff. They didn't. Of course they didn't keep track of that stuff. And I brought
No,
everything up there. Oh my gosh, I was doing. And then later on, I had another job that had the same thing, and I used to work weekends when nobody was there. I would bring up entire books because I was in graduate school at the time, and a lot of the books I had to use for my dissertation were like, we have one copy in the library. You can check it out, but you have to bring it back in a week because this other people doing their dissertation need this book. I would bring it up to work and photocopy the whole book, and then I bring it back like, yeah, here you go, here's your dumb book. I got a copy at home now. But yeah, there's no
man,
telling how much money I wasted at these poor companies running their photocopy machine. Of course, now they have you on camera, and they probably count. They probably have a little digital thing that reads out how many copies are made, and of course, everybody has a printer at their house anyway. So,
right.
you kids nowadays don't know the issues we went through. You have no clue we went through back in those
Well,
days.
your copies work related or
Having to
personal?
go to Kinko's and copy machine place and all whatever those places were. Oh my gosh.
Excuse me, I need you to print.
Yes.
Well, we can't. That's copyright. We can't do that.
Oh God, that was my favorite was when I bring stuff in, they go, we can't copyright that. I said, I'm the author. They go, okay, well, that's good enough for us. And they would just run a copy of it. They just wanted to be reassured because how could they prove you weren't, right?
Right.
You're like, no, my other one was I own the copyright on this, which sometimes that was actually true. If oh, you do? Okay. And they would just run a copy. They just wanted you to reassure them you were going to get in trouble, not them for running a
Right.
copy.
Tanya, you told
I think
me.
they still do that. I think they will still. I know that's why a lot of people get stuff copied just on Lulu and stuff because they don't want to run afoul of the local office max who are like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't run this copy for you. Why not? Well, you're not the copyright holder. Oh, come on, man. Don't make me do this.
Making a personal copy from my own records in case my original gets destroyed in a nuclear bomb. I need a second copy that I can refer to. Come on.
It's just a master's degree, not a doctorate. No doctor word. I didn't do that. I didn't do the work on that, man. Sorry, didn't work that hard. We've been bullshitting for an hour here. We were going to talk about a Kickstarter because Eric brought this up, and it's shocking, but it's shocking in a good way. It's shocking. It's shocking, but it's good. It's good for the industry. It's good for the OSR. It's good for everything, and we'll talk about that later. But first of all, Eric is going to tell you about this Kickstarter, which you probably know about.
Oh, now look how much it raised since I had it last open.
Yes, I've just seen this.
In the last hour, this Kickstarter has raised like, I don't know, $20,000.
Yeah.
There are Kickstarters that don't raise that in a lifetime. Most of them.
No.
Honestly. So Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere RPG. Brandon's name is a name that I look at and I go, I should know that from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't. And I start scratching my head until I did a little research and went, oh, so he's the one that finished the Robert Jordan series.
Finished the Wheel of Time series, yes.
Okay. So apparently he kickstarted 4 novels on Kickstarter, which is currently the highest grossing Kickstarter at over 40.
He totally sidestepped all the publishing companies and said, I'm just going to go straight to my fans, the public, and do this because I don't want to deal with advances and publishing schedules and you want me to change my books up if you don't like this part. You want me to put 3 women in there instead of having 2 of them be a man and this, that. No, I'm just going to do my own thing. I'm going to self-publish. And he made, was it 42 million?
He made
it was ridiculous.
Hold on, I should still have. He made 42 million. 4 secret novels by Brandon Sanderson.
And these were ones he already had written that his publishing company wouldn't publish for one reason or another. Maybe it wasn't because, first of all, publishing companies, this is what Stephen King always says. That's why Stephen King has to publish under pseudonyms. He writes so much that his publishing company is like, no, we can only publish 1 of your books a year. We're not going to publish more than 1 a year. And so he's got, I'm sitting on 6 novels. So that's why he did the Bachman books, and that's why he does other things too. Well, Sanderson's the same thing. They said, no, we only want to publish like 1 of your books a year. He's like, but I've got all these books written. We'll wait on those. He's like, no, I don't think we're going to wait anymore. I think I'm going to crowdsource this. And he hit the jackpot. $42 million without the publishing company or an agent or anybody taking a chunk of that. And now he's branched off into the RPG world. He's sitting at a cool $7.5 million with 2 weeks to go.
Yeah, it's going to hit over 10 easily.
Now, it'll be 10. Yeah, easily.
Now, here's the thing. I'm looking at this little tidbit here. As of January 2024, Brandon Sanderson's Surprise 4 Secret Novels Kickstarter is the most funded project of all time.
Yep.
Raising nearly $42 million. It ran from March 1st to April 1st, 2022, and had over 181,000 backers. In exchange for their support, Sanderson promised to self-publish 4 novels he wrote during the pandemic. The campaign broke the previous record in just 3 days when it raised $20.3 million in 3 days. And that was more than double the $10.2 million raised by the Pebble smartwatch in 2015.
Cool. Like anybody remembers that anymore.
I remember the Pebble. I always wanted one. And then I was like, I need a.
You might be able to get one now. Maybe they're probably cheap now. Maybe you can get one. Who knows?
Yeah, it's okay. I got my Apple Watch now. I'm happy.
There you go.
What up?
What up?
How we doing?
We're talking big. We're talking big money here.
Big money, no whammies. That's the way life's supposed to roll, my friends. Big money, no whammies. Who's talking about Aaron Gray? Bill Barsh is starting the Aaron Gray Appreciation Society. God love her heart. She's done some really funny interviews about what it was like working on Buck Rogers and how the clothes just got tighter and tighter to the point that they pretty much had to sew her into them. She was talking about one point they had literally stapled the clothes shut so that she could wear them. So,
oh my God.
Yeah.
We're talking Brandon Sanderson, who last year or 2 years ago raised $42 million for his novels, has decided to roll into the world of RPGs, and he's sitting at a cool 7.5 million with 2 weeks to go. And Eric and I were talking about this before the show, and Jim, you can chime in too. This is exactly what WotC wanted to prevent when they wanted to destroy the OGL. They don't like other people making money off of RPGs.
And come on, if I was Brandon Sanderson, I would take somebody who is named Mike Merrills or somebody similar, and I would say, Mike, how would you like to make $500,000? I'd like you to create the Cosmere RPG rule set and nurse this baby through, and I'll pay you $500,000 for 1 year of your life. And why would Mike say no? And it doesn't have to be Mike, but it could be whoever. And why would you turn this down? Like, why would you turn this down? This is just nuts. That's a rounding error.
His lead designer is a guy named Andrew Fisher. And maybe it's just me. I'm just not super familiar with him. He's probably done lots of work in the industry, but that's the lead designer, and I'm sure he's very happy about it. This is
no
going
shit.
down now.
No shit, right? Like I would get him in an agreement where you promise him a percentage based on follow-on sales, right? Like I would give him 2.5-3% of all follow-on sales of everything after the Kickstarter. Get to typing, buddy. I want to hear those keys.
Here's his team, and let me know if you guys have heard of these people. Dan Wells is VP of Narrative. Andrew Fisher's lead designer. Lydia Swan is lead writer. Johnny O'Neill, creative director. Laura Hirschrunner, lead editor. I mean, I'm not familiar with them. I'm sorry. And they're probably very famous in their fields. I just don't know. But I'm looking. I don't see any names I recognize here. It's got a huge list of contributors. For all we know, Brandon Sanderson might just sat back and said, "You guys create an RPG. We'll use my name. We'll make $10 million. What do you think?"
I'd like more money for my money bin.
Yes. And
I am the Scrooge McDuck of authors. I wish to swim about in my coinage.
But Jim, this is exactly what WotC didn't really want. They don't want other people jumping in and making $10 million with their RPG. That's But they don't.
But you know what? Like, let's talk about this. Okay. I'm sorry, but this is what WotC needs to see. This is what Hasbro needs to see. Right? If we go back to my point last week, WotC's got to go through the wilderness before they start coming back out with things that we all like and love. And if this is one of the pain points that gets talked about in the boardrooms at Hasbro or at WotC leadership, again, this is what's going to happen. This is the kind of thing that needs to happen. So have at it, right? Guess what? The OGL.
I was saying somebody made a good point after last week's Gen Con, and somebody was saying, well, WotC did an amazing job. They sold out of all, 3,000 copies of the rule book. And somebody pointed out, there was 70,000 people there. I don't know if you want to pat yourself on the back by selling your rule book to less than 5% of your audience there. So, yeah, great. You sold 3,000 copies, whatever, but you didn't even sell it to more than 5% of the people that were at the con. Big numbers would have been if they had actually brought a lot of copies and sold, 10,000 a day or something, 30,000 copies or whatever. That would have been big numbers. So yeah, that's great. You sold 3,000. You sold to 5% of the people that attended Gen Con. That's wonderful. This is the kind of thing that WotC would love to have happen, but it all comes down to quality and just people excitement over this. I mean, I read through it. I mean, it's not the kind of game I'd like, Cosmere, but it sounds really interesting. It sounds like they've done a lot of work. Okay. They've done a lot of work on this.
But this is an unfair comparison. Mr. Gunn says, well, the most popular compared to the Harry Potter lady. I'm sorry, but there's no comparison. I love Brandon Sanderson. I think the books are fine, but that's a load of horse shit, right? Like, Jesus Christ. She could probably buy Scotland at this point. And there's a great article from the Wall Street Journal a few years ago talking about how who's the theme park across from Disney World? Is it MGM Universal, whatever it is? Where's Harry Potter
Yeah,
World?
it's Universal Studio. I bet that's
Universal
Universal,
Studios.
right? Yeah.
So Universal Studios went to go talk to J.K. Rowling about what they wanted to do, and there had been a lot of rough patches in their relationship where Universal knew that they weren't on the best of terms with J.K. Rowling.
Mm-hmm.
And they've gone a long way to repairing the relationship. They've gone a long way to fixing this. And yes, it's a 7,595,000 Kickstarter. That's fantastic. But all it's going to take is J.K. Rowling having one of her kids say, "Mom, why don't we have a role-playing game for Harry Potter that really does it right?" And she's just going to be like, I think I'm going to take the interest for I'm going to take 1 month's interest on royalty payments, and I'm going to just start a company, and I'm going to have them do an RPG, and it's just going to be over. Like, I love Brandon Sanderson, and he's an incredibly successful fantasy author, but he's not Rowling. He's not got Rowling's kind of money, you know.
Well, she's in the Elon Musk sphere.
She's in the ether sphere.
I don't give an F anymore about anything. If you ever see her post, she doesn't really care.
No, she doesn't care.
FU money. Yeah,
Brandon Sanderson's got some FU money at this point,
right?
But she's at I'm going to buy Pluto. like there's not
I'll make
even
it a
comparison.
planet again.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and so I don't think that's particularly good. So Jim,
I just want to ask you a question. So looking at this, you're watching. You look at this. What are you saying, and what are you thinking?
Fuck me.
Going, oh.
That's the words I would say. I mean, if I was WotC and I had a meeting, I would pull everybody in the room and I would put this up on the screen and I would let the silence. Oh, look, it went up while we were talking. Excellent.
Oh, it went up 20,000 since the beginning of the stream.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is what I would do. I was the president of WotC. I would pull in my coterie, my gigantic coterie of assorted vice presidents and directors and the 40-odd people with titles that are like this. And I would say, I want to show you all something. I don't want you to say anything. I just want you to see this. And I would put this up on the screen, and I would leave it on the screen until the dollar amount went up some more. And it could take a minute. It could take 5 minutes. I don't care. But I would wait until it bumps up again. And then I would just say, fuck me. I want you to look at that, right? He's almost at $7.6 million with 2 weeks to go. Why do we not have something comparable? Like, that's a great question. You know, 5th edition D&D certainly generated numbers that were bigger than this. And I want to talk about Critical Role for a second, right? So I will be the first person to say, I've never watched an episode of Critical Role. I have some inside connections to some of the cast of Critical Role. I've heard things about the cast of Critical Role. I've never watched an episode. I've never listened to an episode. I've seen my local Barnes & Noble and other places awash with Critical Role licensed merchandise, and I'm aware there was a cookbook and an RPG supplement, whatever. I don't care. But now Critical Role is on all the clearance sections at my local store. You know, the guy at my Chick-fil-A who talks about Critical Role doesn't talk about it the same way he did 2 years ago, right? There's always a high point, and then there's always the descent. You know, when you're going up the mountain, everything's great. Once you crest the mountain and you're starting down on the other side, welcome.
Daggerheart was the name. Daggerheart was their RPG.
Yeah. Okay, great. Sure enough. But you got to look at this and say, what do 26,000 people love about Cosmere? How many people backed the Critical Role one? I don't know off the top of my head. But 26,000 people signing up to buy a copy of an unproven, unreleased game. That's great. Player's Handbook 2024, I don't know what the print runs are like. But based on what I think I know about it, they could have a 50,000 copy print run. They're selling that at, I don't know, do the math, kitchen. These numbers all work out to something good, but are they what they need, and are they sustainable the way 5th edition was sustainable? Everybody's calling it, I don't know, what do we call it? 5.5, 5.6, 6.0. I don't care.
Forever, D&D forever.
He wants to call it. We should call it D&D forever, which
D&D forever.
Yeah,
right. So let's assume that they had at least a 50,000 print run. And what's the price on the book? $55?
I think 60.
60?
$59.99, something like that. Yeah.
So $60. Retail is $3 million. Okay, so let's triple that. Let's triple that and say that they had 150,000 print run for the first printing. That's a pretty big number. That's a really big number, especially in the publishing industry this day. And that's $9 million retail, but we all know that it's not going to be sold at retail through Amazon and some of these others. WotC's cost on that at call it 4. Yeah, I just don't think. I think you got to look at this and go, that's money out of our pocket. That's money out of our pocket. It's a competing product. And it goes to what I call the balkanization of the RPG industry, right? Because you're just driving people into silos that are no longer cross-talking, right? Like the Call of Cthulhu people start to get in a silo where all they want is Call of Cthulhu. Mm-hmm. The DCC people get in a silo where all they want is DCC. There is some stuff that's coming around. Third-party sellers are tailoring things to these silos. But Cosmere is just another silo, and I would look at that as 26,000 backers. What happens if 20% of those people never go to another Dungeons and Dragons product or project? Excuse me. I just think there's concerns there. I think there's serious concerns. I was talking with somebody this week who's a video game developer, and we were talking about success of publishing your own product. And one of the things that came into the discussion was Shadow Dark, right? Because we all are still talking about Shadow Dark. Mm-hmm. Shadow Dark is an example of one person's curated vision that carries through and really and truly, from stem to stern, Kelsey stuck the landing, right? If it was the Olympics, Kelsey absolutely stuck the landing. It was perfect. But Shadow Dark creates its own, like, all I want to do is play Shadow Dark. I'm interested in Shadow Dark, right? Okay, that's fine, and that's great, and that's awesome. But again, we're now hitting that period that we were in the early 80s, where after D&D peaked, and then it was so hot, but then we had all these other competitors that came out. Like, I'm not a paranoia guy. I'm not. I never have been. But I knew people who played Paranoia hardcore for a year because it was funny and it was silly and it was not D&D, and they didn't touch a D&D product that entire year. Okie doke. I think we're going to see that. This is just another big sign of what's coming. 5th edition burned hot and burned fast, and that's great. But move over. There's a lot of other competing products.
And 5th edition had a great run. I mean, we're talking a decade-long run.
A 10-year run.
Everybody made their game compatible with 5th edition because you had to, if you wanted to sell it. Everybody was scared to go outside the lines and not do something that was 5e compatible. And so they all used the template of the 5e rules because it was huge. And it's great now. Now here we are because, like you said, there's a trajectory, and then you do this, you level, and then you do this. And right now 5e is a little that way. And so people are jumping in with, the OSE and Shadow Dark and Tales of the Valiant and all these people are jumping in. They're taking away little pieces of the market. They're taking their little, like you said, organizations are good.
Everybody understands their favorite band was hot, and now they're on the casino tour, and there's a reason for that. and I don't say that in a mean way, but you go from filling arenas to maybe I can fill a casino ballroom, and that's the way in nature of these things. But okay, so So I think by the time we're done tonight, it'll probably crest 7.6. That's awesome. But let's look at this. 26,000 copies. This tells me that retail stores are going to take a look at this and say, I'll order one. I saw somebody saying, well, I wonder if they're going to sell it through Amazon and retail. If I was a game retailer and this hits 35,000 backers, if it hits some astronomical number, I'm going to assume that my Brandon Sanderson fans have already jumped on board, and I'll probably order in 1 or 2 copies, depending on how strong an RPG store I am. And frankly, I don't know a lot of game stores at this point that are relying on their RPG stock as being their number one selling point.
Not with this going on the last 2 years.
No, not at all. And that goes from the biggest stores like Games Plus or the Century Box down to your mom and pop comic book store where they have had a D&D section for a while. But one of the things that I used to do when I visited retail stores, so I've probably been to about 1,500 independent game retailers in North America, Europe, and England. And one of the things that I used to do, just to sort of get an idea of how often stock was turning over, if I knew I would be back at a store at some point, I would take little tiny microdots and I would actually put them on the bottom of spines of books to see how quickly they were turning over. And sometimes I would see, like, how quickly are they turning core games over? How quickly are they turning the fundamentals over, and so on. And I can tell you 90% of the stores that I would go to were not turning over those things as quickly as they should, and then couldn't understand why they weren't hitting more sales. Cosmere is going to be huge, but Cosmere is a direct sale product, right? Don't kid yourself. Eric, can you go to the campaign and let's see what the prices are? Because you're going direct to the consumer, and you're asking
I think it's $95 to get a book.
Sure, $100, $100. Don't take me to the Ever. I want the book. I want the Dead Tree version. You pick 2, $95. So $50 a whack. The Player, $195. Sure, you're going direct to the consumer and bypassing the store and distribution channel completely. And frankly, distribution and retailers have been burned by Kickstarters before. They're very prejudicial about this. I don't know any retailer that just wholeheartedly says, oh, Cosmere, I need to get 20 copies. Nobody's going to order 20 copies of this for their store. Nobody's going to order aggressive numbers, because the bigger this blows up, the less likely it's going to sell through at retail.
Sure.
And let me sorry, go ahead.
I want to say real quick, the local store that we have it's been around since the early 90s. So they've had a really nice 30-year run, which is amazing when you talk about game store, comic stores, whatever. But that they have sustained this by going all in on stuff. When 3E started, they went all in. When Pathfinder was huge, they were all in on Pathfinder. Every shelf with Pathfinder. When 5E got big, they were all in on 5E. And they've struggled the last 2 years because 5E, it's kind of in that limbo. And so they're waiting for the next big thing is what it boils down to.
So look at this, right? This retailer pledge is $400. You get 4 sets. It's an $800 value. They're assuring the retailer it's an $800 value. You have to be a pretty beefy retailer to buy a retailer pledge at $400, because that means you got to find 4 people in your role-playing game customer base who you think you're going to be able to sell this to, and that will not have already backed it themselves directly. And I think that's a legitimate concern. I think that's a question to have. Let's talk about Kickstarters for a second. So I'm going to give the Talking Crit audience just a slight preview of something that we're talking about for the Gen Con auction next year. So one of the things that has popped up, I was late because I was in a Gen Con auction meeting where we were doing an after action report.
Ooh, girlfriend.
One of the things that's really interesting is that right now in my dining room, I have the entire $400 pledge for a Kickstarter that I have not had time to play. Etherfields. If you went onto Kickstarter, you could see Etherfields. I'm a sucker for miniature games, and I pledged, And now the albatross around my neck is 4 gigantic boxes of ether fields. And so at the Gen Con auction, we see a lot of this, to the point that we've now decided on Thursday night at Gen Con, we're going to have a bawdy, piratical Kickstarter, Sailing the Seas of Kickstarter subsection of the auction, where the only thing in it will be Kickstarter or backer kit or whatever. But if they're big lots that came from somebody's Kickstarter and so on, we're going to put them all in their own section. And I'm going to be just balls to the wall, silly and dumb with this stuff. Yes, there you go. Right? So if you are watching this and you missed out on ether fields and you'd like the full Dream God pledge, please reach out to me. I'd love to speak to you. But we're going to do a subsection at the auction of nothing but Kickstarters, because just like there are so many board games in people's closets, I'm a classic example. I don't have time to play this. I know that, and I need to find it a new home. And so we've decided that we're going to do that on Thursday night at Gen Con, and we're going to have a lot of fun and wear goofy pirate hats and make piratical jokes and make references to the Ogre Deluxe Edition Armada that's just across the horizon, blah, 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 blah.
Well, that's actually a really good idea, because, you know, I mean, I'm sure that's become, I remember when the last time I went to Gen Con, we're talking 2008, 9, 7, 8, 9, you would always get those things that the dealers would dump because they don't want to bring it back home. So you have, especially in the charity auction, because that way they could write it off, right? They could write off their junk. And so you get these long stretches when you're like, oh boy.
And we're addressing that. I can't comment publicly, but we're going to address that as well.
I think that should have been addressed a long time ago, because that's always a slowdown. Yes. But I think this is a good idea, because yes, the Kickstarters have proliferated so much in the past decade that you probably could just choke an auction out, Jim, by just doing Kickstarter after Kickstarter to Kickstarter. And as you said, it's a great way to get. Let's say you missed a Kickstarter, it's a great way to say get the whole Kingdom Death line, or get the you said Etherfields line. But oh my God, that's got to slow down an auction horribly.
It does. And the problem is each one of these are gigantic lots, right? They're always like several boxes and so on and so forth. But I wanted to talk about a couple of things. I know I'm late, but I wanted to talk about a couple of things that aren't WotC. I know, shocker there. But I thought it would be good to sort of talk about what's coming up. There's the show in Appleton, Wisconsin this coming weekend. That's really PhoenixCon, isn't it? PhoenixCon. It's in Appleton this weekend. Mm-hmm. Very well regarded. Gamehole is on the horizon for October, and October is far closer than anybody realizes. We're getting into what I always love to call the coming of fall for role playing, right? The weather's going to change. It's going to drive us all into our houses, and this is where role playing sales and everything sort of pick up as we get into fourth quarter. It's colder outside. Kids are settling into school, and so on and so forth. And so I guess what I would throw out is, this is a great time of year to think about your campaign. This is a great time of year to think about the people you play with. You know, there's always summer hiatuses, or your weekly sessions drop down to monthly or whatever. But this is a great time to think about what it is you want to do to make your game better, and what it is you want to do to make the experience for the players at your table, how to recruit new players. I think that's something to start thinking about right now. I was thinking about that when I was doing some yard work this week. And really and truly, some of my best memories of discussing all things RPG were walking with a friend of mine on a paper route, where we would talk about modules, we would talk about all this stuff, and just sort of shoot the shit and think about all this stuff and so on and so forth. This is a great time of year to do that, right? The kids are all starting to go back to school. You start to get a little more free time. You can start thinking about this. I'm in an infrequent Call of Cthulhu game. It's not weekly. It's not bi-weekly. It's when things sort of manage to happen. But I've thought that it would be nice to get into a regular game. I've been threatened with a game of Rollmaster, and I'm still not sure. I'm still not sure. I mean, I can show you on the platypus where the Rollmaster hurt my brain trying to create a character, but I'm not 100% sure that I don't know when that's going to get started. Look, Stephen Fowler, I have all these CMON games, right? CMON Dude, I mean, Simon is like the National Geographic of fantasy games. Like Simon is like, your grandparents would die, and there was literally 4.5 tons of National Geographics that you had to figure out how to get them out of the basement, one schlep load at a time, right? If you're a Simon player, like, what flavor of Zombicide is left? Like, I genuinely don't know. Is there like Zombicide Cro-Magnons? Is there like Zombicide Polynesian? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I stopped at the first two, and then I was done after Green Death or whatever. And that I was like, you know what? I think they're all going to be kind of the same. I don't really know if I need any more Zombicide. So
yes,
I stopped at number 2. That was it.
And I like a good, like, I'm not one of those people that has trouble playing online, right? What I do have trouble is when 6 people are in a channel and it's nobody's talking, and it's, that's hard to me. That's really hard to me. But this is a great time of year to start thinking about that, right? I have a project that I want to get done before North Texas. And I've already sort of laid out a little timeline of stuff that I need to do to make sure that happens, and so on and so forth. So I'm sort of laying the seeds for next year. I'm thinking 3 months in advance, 6 months in advance, 9 months, 12 months, right? So I'm talking about Gen Con tonight next year, but I'm also thinking about North Texas. I'm thinking about possibly Origins. I'm thinking about Gary Con, blah, 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 blah. But this is a great time of year. This is a great time of year to put on your RPG hat and really sort of think about what it is you want to do and what it is you want to be playing as we get closer and closer to the winter months, right? Fall is coming. Fall is always one of those great times of year for RPGs. My God, Dragons of Autumn Twilight. It literally has autumn in the name. What more of a clue do you need? God, Tinkar is just like, shut up, Kitchen.
No,
shut
maybe this
up.
is my excuse to look. I have a copy of Gloomhaven that's been sitting in the box for 2 years. Maybe this is my time to get out Gloomhaven. Mm-hmm. I need to start getting that Gloomhaven out and looking around and see who I can get. Because I have a once a month D&D group. We meet pretty regularly. We met all during the summer too, but that's just 1 week a month. Maybe right. I need Gloomhaven for another week. I don't know.
That's and I have a friend who plays Gloomhaven online. He and his friend, he's got a cousin and a couple of friends or whatever, and they play Gloomhaven on Sunday nights. And like, Gloomhaven's a coffee table, right? It's a coffee table masquerading as a game. But everybody I know that's run through it just loves it, absolutely loves it. And that's great. I just don't have room. I mean, Jesus, as soon as I get ether fields out of my house, I'll have a hell of a lot more room. But I don't have room for a Gloomhaven in my life right now. I just don't. So
Gary could tell you after Doug passed, one of the things we had to deal with was Doug was a prolific, and he's going to chime in, I know, because he's watched us. He was a prolific backer of Kickstarters. And like, for instance, he backed anything Dwarven Forge did. He bought whatever the most was. Boxes. Cthulhu Wars. Jim, we could have Cthulhu Wars for the next 100 years. It could be the 100-year Cthulhu Wars with the stuff that Doug left behind in Cthulhu Wars. This is all sitting in the warehouse now. We're probably going to end up having to sell it because we just can't do anything with it. There's, as Jerry said, top levels every time. He would back the highest level. And so we're stuck with all that stuff now. We'll probably end up selling it.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is that we all get excited. We all get pulled into it. And the problem is that we don't apply brakes, right? We're just excited. And like ether fields, man, I was loving those updates, and I was all in, and it was exciting, and it was cool. I need somebody to show up at my door with $400 and a truck to take the ether fields away from my house, and I will be
Jim, mine was Kingdom Death. The second version that came out, I had read so much about the game. I heard so much about the game. I read about it. I wanted Kingdom Death. So I backed Kingdom Death, and I stayed in until the very end. And then when they came time to push the button to give them your money, I sat there and said, is this something I'm ever going to play? And I wrestled with my conscience, and I looked around the house and saw how little room I have to put anything anymore. And I said, you know what? I just can't in good conscience do this. And so I had to say no to the $400 or $500 back I had. I mean, it looks like I'd love to have it, but I'm never going to play it.
I'm a Kingdom Death guy, and it's a commitment, right? It's a lifestyle commitment. Yeah. But what is so fascinating about that is, I'll talk about this because if people don't know, Adam Poots is the guy who created Kingdom Death. He was a huge fan of Warhammer Quest. He loved it. He wanted to really deliver something that was an adult experience. Somebody said, "Is that the softcore porn stuff?" They make some miniatures that are risque, but
They're top of the
but they're
line
not
stuff.
the core miniatures for the game. What they are is they are a means of keeping the company going while he's delivering on one of the largest Kickstarters ever. And look at BattleTech. Gary had the giant pile of BattleTech that showed up at his house. And I love Gary, but I've seen dudes post pictures of what they got in the last Kickstarter fulfillment, and Gary's an amateur, right? I saw a guy who posted a picture of what all he got, and I thought to myself, number one, you got a lot of disposable money, and I'm happy for you. And I'm genuinely happy that you got everything you ever wanted. But I look at that and I just think, I have a pile of shame that I'm trying to work my way down. I can't afford to do another one of these Kickstarters, right? We have people on here who talk about their Kickstarters who are very earnest, and I want to support. But I have to be pretty prejudicial about money right now. And so there's only one recently, of all the people we've had on talking about Kickstarters, there's only been one that I backed simply because the numbers sort of seemed against them, and I really wanted to help them get there. And I have to be careful too about that, because we all back crowdfunding projects because we like the creator and we want to help them and we want to do our part. And I have, there's a shelf over there. Wait. It would be that one that has a bunch of Kickstarter stuff that I don't really need. I've read most of it and I like it and I'm glad I bought it. But if I were really to do some hard math and take the heart out of the equation, why did I do it? And none of us really want to apply those kind of filters to what we spend our money on. But we all have mountains of stuff that we just don't need.
My thing has been digests.
Yeah. And here's Rob Conley's stuff that I recently backed. I'm able to keep the Jones going, but without getting this is the Tom Wilson product for Shadow Dark. These are affordable. They're $15, $20 on Gary's Pennings. I really enjoy. That's a great little fanzine.
Yep.
But this is what I've had to resort to, because I cannot afford to bring any giant boxes in the house anymore. So as you see back here, I have a pile of these little digests, and that's what I do now. I back digests for smaller creators, but mostly it's just stuff that can fit in the house. I don't have to worry about creating a whole new wing, to put the Kingdom Death miniatures or the the Cthulhu Wars giant boxes. And I just can't do it anymore. And so that's been my outlet. Has been smaller fanzines, digests, things like that you can read through in a day. You read through it in a day, or adventures. You read through it. If you want to keep it, you keep it. If not, you put it back up on eBay, or you give it to somebody. You put it in an auction somewhere, and you get rid of it.
So I had somebody who knew that I had been looking for something forever, and they had managed to find me a copy of Skull Fungus's book of the Isle of Ix, a really small print run little adventure where it's set on a crashed spaceship in the middle of an ocean that's turned into an island. And I was over the moon. I was probably more excited about that than I was almost anything else I've got in RPG. Don't get me wrong, I love Shadow Dark, but in the last 4 or 5 months, I was so happy to get the Isle of Ix. I don't even have words, just because it's small, it's compact, it's a quick read. I read through it one night in bed. I was unbelievably happy I had it. So I think the audience for Kickstarters is starting to mature. I think you have people like this Brandon Sanderson, who they love Brandon Sanderson, and come on, what happens with most RPGs that people buy? They read them, they never play them. This is just an extension of loving the Silverlight Chronicles and they want more in-depth material of the world in a way that they don't have to read 5,000 pages of novels to get to.
Sure.
And good on them, right? Like I'm all for that. Let them buy the book and live it and read it and so on and so forth. But how many backers are there now? 28,000. However many.
It's right on the edge of 7.6. It'll be a 7.6 in another 10 minutes.
Sure.
We're looking at 26,026.
26,000 backers.
It's $42 less than.
Yes. So it'll hit 7.6. But my point is, we've all been doing Kickstarter and backer kit and so on and so forth long enough that we've now recognized where our limits are, right? We've run out of space. We've run out of interest. We recognize that we can only go X way, Y way, whatever. I'm always pleased to see an RPG product have a successful run like this. I think Brandon Sanderson is a name. He's going to do well. But most RPG products don't do these kinds of numbers.
Right.
And we all have to recognize that. I think one time on here I made an analogy that RPG publishers are a lot more like Arkham House or Dark Harvest or other small boutique publishers like Subterranean Press than they are true game companies. They're making books for the faithful. They have small limited print runs. They send them out. They find new homes. And we're all in a fight to have a collection of the ones that are in the absolute best condition. And that's not growing the hobby, right? That's not actually doing anything that promotes the hobby. I think one of the things that you can do is if you've got kids that are at the right age, you introduce them to the player's handbook or whatever. It's just the only way the hobby grows is if you spread the hobby. If you make the effort, if you put the time and effort into trying to grow the hobby. And this is a great time to start thinking about how you're going to plant the seeds for the hobby over the fall. Right?
This is what's cool about going to conventions like Jim does and I do too. Is you go to these conventions, you see what everybody's interested in. You see what the hot games are. What is everybody playing? What does everybody want to run? And that's always given me a really good pulse on the game industry, especially when I go to North Texas. Yeah, it's a smaller con. Okay, what are the old school guys running? What are the old school guys interested in now? This year it was Call of Cthulhu and Shadowdark. And that was the two big
CMI. Sorry,
everybody wanted to run. No, it was actually it was Call of Cthulhu and Shadowdark. Those are the two highest. Gary can back me up on this. Those are the two highest growers, or I don't know what you call it, but the two games that had grown the most over the past year was Call of Cthulhu submissions and Shadowdark. And then you go to conventions like Gamehole. What is everybody running? You look at the programs. You see what is hitting, because a lot of times what is selling is not the same thing as what people are playing. As you said, Jim, a lot of people buy these, as they call them, aspirational purchases. You buy it because I'm going to run a campaign.
I'm going to do this someday. Bullshit. They're not going to do this someday.
No,
They're not going to do this someday. Again, if 80-90% of the RPG books sold are only ever read, then 85-90% of the Kickstarters that are sold are like the one in my dining room. They're in the original boxes. They're in the original shrink, and they need a new home.
They're just pretty. I mean,
put that comment back up, Eric. Put that comment back up from Chris Lundgren. I wanted to thank you for the video and stuff, encouraging people to look into Swords and Wizardry, the complete edition, which works with the box set. We'll see. Like, there's an awesome move. I just made a free PDF for it for a world set. Well, how cool is that?
Very cool.
That is cool, right? Good on you, Chris Lundgren. You get a star. But
I'm enjoying Swords and Wizardry. I know that.
So did you guys talk about the dick move of the week that isn't WotC?
Oh, did we miss
which one was this?
Oh God, have you heard about this horrible case of a wife that died at Disney World?
Oh God.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Oh boy. Oh, this is crazy. Yeah.
A husband and wife are at Disney World on a vacation. She has. Oh, we're over 7.6. Good for you, Brandon Sanderson. Husband and wife are at Disney World. Wife has a horrific allergy. They put in the request, make sure that this food is allergen free, blah, blah, blah. They're assured it is. Guess what? It isn't. She eats it. She has complications. She dies. This is a tragedy. Despite all of the assurances the food would not contain allergens, of course it did, and the husband files a wrongful death suit against Disney World or Walt Disney. And lo and behold, Disney's lawyers have been trying to use the argument that because they agreed to the terms of service to Disney Plus, that Disney should not have to go to court, and that this allows them to go to arbitration instead of going to court and facing damages. Now, I don't know who Satan, the lawyer, is at Walt Disney that thought that this was a great defense because the couple had a Disney Plus account. But my God, if there's anything that makes me want to cancel my Disney Plus account, this is it. Like, I just can't believe that somebody somewhere said, this is a great idea, and there won't be any PR backlash if we do.
I can't think, Jim. I looked at that and I laughed because I read that to my wife. I said, I just can't think the jury's going to go, no, that is a really interesting point.
They want the judge to rule on it. So it's not.
Yeah, I think the judge.
It's a matter of law. And listen, this reminds me of the OGL fiasco, where it's like, well, forever doesn't mean forever. If we look at it this way, they won't mind if we cancel the OGL. We'll give them a new one with new requirements. You know, it's we've all played with rules lawyers. Maybe we've been one on occasion. But this is that literal trying to be a rules lawyer. Like,
this is all about everything that these lawyers do. Is they don't like to go to court. This is all about settlements. If they muddy the water enough and they make you spend enough money on your lawyer, they're hoping that you will settle. It all goes down to settlements. They will throw out the most ludicrous arguments, just hoping that this is going to make you want to settle and not have to go to court because. What's the stat? 95% of cases never even go to court. They're settled because they want to settle. And that's what this is all about.
I'm Disney's vampire lawyer. 1 second here.
Don't make me laugh. But this is all about trying to get a settlement and of course, I'm sure the lawyers told them this. Look, we don't want to give them too much money because what if everybody that dies on our property of allergens tries to
There's legions of people dying on our properties.
If they all try to die. If they all die, then we're going to have to settle with all of them. And oh my gosh.
So let's be clear, though. Let's be clear. It was not a Disney restaurant. It was one of these Disney restaurants on Disney property. Disney is named in the wrongful death suit. They're trying to get more than the Florida statute of $50,000, which is why they want to go to court. And I don't blame Disney for trying to defend themselves. But dragging in the end user license agreement for Disney Plus as the crux of your defense, I'm sorry, but this week we are going to tip the hat. We're going to tip the hat from Watsy and really say, Disney, congratulations. You pulled the dick move of the week. So,
does this mean because of my Blockbuster membership that if Tom Cruise hits me with a car, they can say, well, when you checked out Mission Impossible the first time with Blockbuster, back when Blockbuster still existed, you did have an arbitration agreement. What? So I'm afraid you can't do any. That's. I said that and I had to laugh because look, lawyers get a lawyer, right? Lawyers are going to lawyer.
One of my favorite stories ever, one of my favorite legal defense stories ever is Dave Stevens creates The Rocketeer. And Dave Stevens has this little comic book that's puttering along and finally it starts to get a little bit of success. And Marvel, before Disney, but Marvel, who had a character or a group of characters named the Rocketeers, decides to start fighting a legal battle for infringement. And poor Dave Stevens pours all this money into his legal defense and is just trying to fight Marvel's attorneys at every chance. And it's just they're crushing his will. They're crushing his spirit. It takes every spare bit of cash he has. And he's got like the nicest lawyer in the world who's just treading, he's not moving towards the island. He's simply treading water where he is. And then Disney comes along and is like, hey, we're sort of interested in this. Would you like to do a movie? And he says, well, I'd love that. And I'd love it. I think who directed it? Joe Johnston, I think, directed it. And he's like, that would be amazing. But I have this problem. And they're like, you have a problem? And he's like, yeah, I've been fighting this protracted battle with Marvel. And they're like, oh, we could fix that for you. And they're like, oh, okay. And so the best part of this is that Dave Stevens' lawyer is in the courtroom, and Marvel's three like oily New York stereotypical lawyers are at their table, and lo and behold, the Dave Stevens attorney says, Your Honor, I'd like to introduce co-counsel to help me with this case. And he's like, sure, who's your co-counsel? And like the suits from Disney start coming in, and there's like 6 or 7 of them, and they're just like, I'm so and so representing Walt Disney, da 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 da, and Marvel's like, oh shit, right? Boom, and it was done.
Their tie pops off.
That's right, and that they had done all their research, and they just slaughtered them in court. And Marvel was like, we're done, we're out, tap out, and that's how they got the Rocketeer greenlit.
Good movie too, by the way. It's a fun movie.
Oh, it's a great movie. Nobody ever watches it as much as they should, right? Like it's
good stuff.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
By the way, Jim, we debuted a new part of our show that we're going to do weekly, and I wanted you to be on, but I had to preview it. And I won't go on the whole preamble again. It was a 5-minute long preamble. It was about how I'm selling stuff now because I'm old and I want to get rid of a lot of things. I'm going to pay for health insurance, yada, yada, yada. So I'm going through my giant book collection, and every week I'm going to bring out what is Michael selling this week on eBay. And it's stuff I'm listing on eBay, and I'm trying to find esoteric things that are not, I'm not going to put up, I just sold a copy of D1. So I have 2 things for this week. This is the first I previewed. Which, if you're aware of this,
of the Minotaur.
We talked about it. This is the
1980
the computer
PSR.
game. Yep, yes. Computer game for the Apple, not the Apple II anything, the Apple computer for DOS 3.3. This was
I have Fight in the Skies. I actually have the Fight in the Skies.
There was 4 of them. There was Dungeon. There was this. There was Fight in the Sky. There was one more, Jim. I don't know. If
I thought there were only 3, but yeah,
I think there's 4, but I don't know. So here's the other thing. So Jim's here. Here's the other thing I'm going to be putting up. So
oh my gosh, the notebook.
Yep, these are the St. Regis notebooks. I sold one several years ago, and here's I think I've got one more, but all this is, it was just a 3-ring notebook.
Stop! I can only get so erect.
With a licensed picture on it. There was about, how many of these, Jim? Half a dozen, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but that's
they had
the player's handbook.
The TSR thing. Yeah, this is the player's handbook one. They have, some of the other ones have artwork that was original artwork, and I can't remember the artist. I'm flubbing this up bad, but these are extremely hard to find, Cokes.
That's gorgeous.
These are extremely hard to find, and so these are things, like I said, that they don't even appear on eBay enough for me to even get an idea what the price is. So sometimes I kind of set them aside. I take pictures and I set it aside, wait for somebody to sell one. I'm not proud about that, but I'll do it. I'll wait to see what somebody else gets for it, then I'll say, okay, that's about what it's worth.
So are you going to start it at $1 and let it run, or are you going to start it at like a minimum of?
I do all my eBay stuff is buy it now. I research the prices, based on 30 years of selling on eBay. I'll research prices and I'll think this is what I have to get for it. I'm not going to bother with the starting off at $1, and I just put all my stuff on eBay is buy it now. And it's priced competitively. It's usually not the highest price of something, but it's what I figure the market will bear, what I figure it's actually worth. Right. These are 2 items actually that I've done research on for the last few years. They appear so infrequently, it's almost impossible to get a price for them. So I did take pictures of them this week. I may still wait some longer. I may wait longer. Maybe it'll go into Gen Con next year. I don't know.
Right.
I think
so it would do well at Gen Con. I'll just throw that out.
Right.
So a couple of things, Chris. Sorry, I'm just looking at the comments. Chris Lundgren asked if we had heard of the happiest apocalypse on Earth. I have not. And Steve Fowler said, "What if you get D plus through the package?" Well, Disney's argument is if you agree to, you have to agree to Disney's terms to turn D plus on, to turn Disney Plus on, and that's their point, is that you have said, I abide by the end user license agreement, and thus it is if we murder your wife accidentally through one of our food agencies, through a second party, through a third party restaurant.
You agree to arbitration.
That's right. You agree to arbitration.
Oh my God. But anyway, but I saw, so by the way, if you guys haven't watched it, I watched this week. I saw somebody put up a video, Jim, of the entire last 25 minutes of the Gen Con auction. It's up on
God. YouTube.
It's on YouTube. No, you got, it looks great. It starts out with the Snow White Grenadier and goes all the way through everything you guys auctioned. So there was a couple of things I wanted to add that I thought were interesting. We talked a little bit about last week. There was a lot of no sales.
Yes.
Probably more than I've seen in a while. Do you think that was because of high reserve? What do you think was the reason behind some of those high?
So I'll talk to a couple of things, and I don't mind talking to this. We had what I would call an after action meeting tonight with the Gen Con auction crew talking about all these things. And there were a lot of no sales, and in the collectibles auction, more than anybody wants, because obviously what we want is we want everything in the collectible auction to sell. Absolutely. However, this goes right back to, I have no control over my sellers. None of us have control over our sellers. When you price a white box aggressively, you bear the burden of it not selling. We've already talked about the slabbed items. I found that there were a lot of things in the collectibles auction. Again, one of the things that just crushed the auction in the store this year was the sheer volume of items across the board. And I believe that the auction is going to take some steps to pump the brakes a little bit, right?
Good
because
idea.
we've reached our limit. If I don't have time to talk to things because I'm too worried about the mountain of stuff behind me I have to sell, that's a problem. At a game hole at North Texas, these are places where I can talk about what we're selling a little bit more. I can make some jokes. Gary Con is fast and furious with the amount of time that I have. I have 3 hours and I have a mountain of stuff. And Gen Con this year was a lot more like that. I think one of the things that is, you mentioned the Snow White set. The person who won the Snow White set has been after one forever and was very happy to have won that. Slab things. We've already talked about that. I don't want to. If you want to see my conversation about slab, go to last week. But we can only pick we pick the items for the top. It's unfortunately it's been so good. We've had top 12, top 14, and that's fine. But I can't make sellers, like I said to you just now. Are you going to start that at $1 and let it run? You have an item with no comps available, right, and you want to sell it. Well, if you really want to sell it, you should probably put it at a reserve of 100 and let it go. And the first bid's going to be $100. I mean, I would list it and say my reserve is $100.
Well, something like that would do, like you said, would do great at a Gen Con auction, because that's what Gen Con auction is made for. Is things
Dude,
like that.
I'm going to make somebody else auction off because I'm going to bid. Yes.
I look, and I've been buying and selling stuff online since 1994. This is my 30th year. It's 2024, right? Yeah, it's okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
30th year buying and selling stuff. So what you learn is stuff will usually sell at the level it's supposed to sell. If you put up a white box, it's going to sell what a white box sells for. I was just interested because at Gen Con I saw a lot of stuff that, Jim, I honestly think it would have done really good if it just said dollar starting bid or $100.
Yes.
Some of the reserves were so high on that. I just was like, that's not a good place to start, because it's for what it goes. It's going to sell for what it's worth and what it goes for. And that kind of an audience with that kind of a setting, Gen Con, and that kind of an audience, it's going to go for what it's worth. Specifically, one of the items I was looking at was the John Carter of Mars Gary's copy.
We talked about that last week. $3,000 reserve.
It has interesting cachet, but it's missing pages.
Well, there were two. There was the perfect one for $3,000, and then there was the Gary's working copy with lots of notes and so on and so forth. And again, like we talked about this, the audience for a copy of Warriors of Mars is small,
Right.
smaller than D&D, smaller than, you know, whatever you want to
Right.
call it, right? Like it's below the people who are it's below the people who are interested in Dungeon. It's below the people who are interested in Lankmar, the board game. It's below the interest of people who are interested in a copy of
Mhm.
Empire the Petal Throne, and maybe above that is Battle of Five Armies, right? But it's the lowest end of the TSR early catalog, and you
Absolutely.
gotta love you some Warriors of Mars. You gotta really, really, really want to
That is
own
an
a copy.
aggressive reserve. That is way too aggressive. That to me is the kind of item you just say, let's see how much it's worth. Start bidding off $100 and then see what it goes
I
for.
have
And then
no idea who the seller was. I have no idea who the seller was. But if the seller is going to be at Gamehole, you should put that in the Gamehole auction, and you should put a reserve on that of $2,000, and you should be prepared, just like the guy who had the first printing wood grain. You can set your reserve, but you better be ready to drop the reserve if we get close, but we don't hit it. But $3,000, it didn't sell, and the market's not going to bear that.
And there's an element, and this happens in every collectible market. It happened in comics years ago, where, and this is happening a lot in games now because they've started to be slabbed, and plus 50 years, and people are realizing these things are worth something. You have the aggressive seller out there that says, "I have something worth a lot of money. I want to get my nut. I want to get what this is
what
worth."
it's worth.
Right.
I hate that phrase.
I've seen one of these sell on eBay for $35,000. So this mine, even though it's not as a good condition, it's missing a page and it's drawn on with crayon, it's got to be worth, part of that. And you're seeing that now in the game industry. And one of the things you brought up last week was the people that were trying to sell slabbed items that were like 5.5 and 7.0, which is average condition. People aren't looking for that. They're looking for 9.2s, 9.6, 9.8s. And so it to me, this is what my impression was. These were people who thought, I'm going to prey on the unsophisticated game collector who's going to see something in slab and say, "Oh my, an S1 6.5? Yes, I would like to bid $300 on that." No. I think you're going to find most of the RPG guys out there are going to be more sophisticated than the comic guys. They're not going to fall for that. They're not going to say, just because something's in plastic or a copy of this sold 2 months ago on eBay for $3,000, but it was a perfect copy and it wasn't missing any pages and it didn't have crayon marks on it and it wasn't water stained. That does not mean your copy is worth $100 less. You know what I'm saying? I think our buying public when it comes to RPGs is much more sophisticated. Your opinion? I mean, that's just what I think.
Disagree. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm going to disagree with you briefly because there is a place on Facebook where there are a lot of role-playing games that are bought and sold. And I have seen a lot of good money go towards things that I would not use to line a bird cage. And so a fool and their money are soon parted. And I can't, I go to a convention. I'm really trying to avoid specifics. I go to a convention every year, and there is a dealer in used role-playing games who the condition versus his prices are to me non-starters. I almost bought something from him online where he did not feel compelled to mention that the staples were rusty and that there were problems, because he made sure to take pictures where that was only barely visible in one picture. But two different people pointed it out to me because they knew I was interested. And when I raised the point with him, he said most people aren't interested in staple rust. Nobody cares about staple rust. And that told me everything I needed to know about this person. Yeah. So when the show is over, Mike and Eric, we'll have an offline conversation about this. But this is why I do not trust this person, and I will never buy anything from this person because I know they're full of shit. I can't control sellers. I can't. I can only when I sell something, and I sold some things at Gen Con, some of the things I sold, I didn't get as much as I would have liked. Some of the things did fine. I rolled the dice, and I'm happy with the results. But I'm very clear about condition. I'm very honest. I err on the side of condition. If I say that it's fine near mint, it's going to be fine near mint. One of the comments I had, somebody asked me about the first printing video that I put up on that's been floating around on Facebook. Somebody asked me, why did you go to the effort of reading that description? And I said, because it's transparency, it's honesty. I don't want somebody saying, well, the auctioneer made it sound like it was perfect, and that's why I bid it to $16,000, and it's not, and I want my money back. No, I read all of the condition notes because it's a rare item, and we should be honest about this stuff. We should be forthcoming. I shouldn't have to send you multiple messages asking if there are staple rust on an item that you're trying to sell me. Yes. Jerry's excellent point. We don't give costing advice, right?
Yes.
And the tags are made up before the items are ever brought to Gen Con. They could drop the reserve. We do talk to people. If the person with the reserve is in the audience and says, fine, drop it. I don't care. I just want to sell it. I don't want to carry it home. That's
because
fine.
because they're in the audience and they can see how it's going. If their reserve's 3,000 and it stalls out at 2,000, they may just think, well, I think it's only going to get 2,000. Yeah, go ahead. 2,000 is great. Go sell it for that. That's because they can see they're there on site and they can see, okay, this is, people aren't as interested in this as I thought they were going to be. Yeah, I better take the 2,000 and run here.
And I can't say that I'm particularly perturbed by the fact that somebody decided to spend $2 to put the item in the auction. It sat in the collectibles cabinet until Friday night. It wound up in our creme de la creme, and it didn't sell at $3,000. For all of that minimal amount of effort, the seller knows that at Gen Con it didn't sell for $3,000. Now, if the seller really wants to sell it, they can revisit their price, or they can simply say, I have a unique one of a kind and I'm not going to sell it. But I don't even believe it was autographed by Gary. And for $3,000, your damn copy of Warriors of Mars better be autographed.
Absolutely. Because I was thinking the same thing. Listen to your description. I had 3 red flags in your description that said, yeah, that would get me not going to the. And if those 3 red flags.
Eric, go to the next comment. Can you go down to the next comment?
Gary said something really good. Gary said something really interesting.
Hey, I'm sorry, but you're way off base. We don't do that. We don't give costing advice. It's not my job. Because if you are an uneducated seller and you're just going to put a pie in the sky number on it, I have no control over that. I have to assume that you are educating yourself. You know what you have. The guy who sold the Pagan Publishing rarities in the Gen Con auction, he was like, they'll go for what they go for. I don't have a reserve.
That's a great.
They started at $1 and we go.
Awesome.
And
they did. They went.
And they went, and he had no disappointment. The guy who brought the original art, he was over the moon. He felt like we had made an effort to reach out on social media. He felt like we had really tried to bring a lot of bidders in the room, and he was over the moon because the numbers turned out to be far larger on each piece than he ever thought it was going to be. He was excited.
Sure.
I, like Mike and Eric, I'm not that hard to find. I'm on Twitter @LikeTheRoom. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I really am truly not that hard to find. If you reach out to me and say, Jim, I've got this, what do you think it's worth? I will say, I can show you a couple of completed eBay auctions. I can direct you to a Gen Con auction from 2022 where we sold one of those. Somebody comes up to me and says, I have a Catan limited chest. They made 1,000 of them or whatever. Or I don't know how many they made, 500, whatever the number was. About every other year, we see one at the Gen Con auction. They always go for about $1,000. They're always unopened. They are the Kickstarters before there was Kickstarter. And so if you come to me, so my friend Gord had one of these. He had never opened it. He wanted to sell it. He asked me what I thought it would go for. I said, we sold one last year for $1,000. So I think that could probably be it. He said, well, I don't want it to sell for too low. And I said, well, what do you feel like? And he said, well, how about $500? And And I said, so how about a reserve of 500 with the expectation it'll probably hit 1,000? And he said, okay. I said, no guarantees. He said, fine. It went into the auction. It sold for $1,000. Gord was happy. Everybody was happy.
And by the way, if anybody's interested, I'll do the same thing. And I'm not interested in buying your collection. I will give you the best advice I can based on, I'm not trying to get it from you. So feel free to come to me with anything, because I don't want it. I don't need any more stuff. I don't.
No, and come on, right? The other thing is,
go ahead, and I'll let you know too. Look, this is what it usually goes for. This is what you should do with it. And most of the time, the advice I give is put it on eBay. And
That's
if it's something like, let's say it's a lost Tomoichan, put it on eBay for $10. Well, what about no? It will go for its price. Trust me.
That's right.
You don't pay the extra fees.
Prepare to be popular.
Don't pay the extra fees for this. Don't pay any extra fees. Put it up there, starting bid $1. Within 1 hour, it'll be over $1,000. You're not going to have to worry about it. Don't worry about that, because that's the things that are really valuable. Actually, the things that you worry about are the things that maybe people that are rare, but people haven't heard about as much. And I think that was the issue with probably the Warriors of Mars stuff. It's rare, but it's not super sought after. And I think that's what they were thinking of when they thought, well, I better put $3,000 on it. And I think that was pie in the sky, very much so. But that's the kind of things you worry about.
Let's go back to Brandon Sanderson. Let's see. He's got to be at 7.6 now. So
7.6, 7.61269.
Nice. Okay. So let me just say something, right? Like, one of the things, if you ever want to reach out to Mike or I, reach out to both of us. And the reason I say that is that way you've got a couple of voices and a couple of people trying to be honest with you, right? I see no shortage of people who wander into a Facebook group and say, hey, I've got this, I'd like to sell it.
Absolutely. Every day.
And then you know that their DMs have exploded with message requests. And
hey, I'll give you $100 for that. Yeah, I don't like that kind of. I feel bad for those people because that drives me crazy when somebody tries to make a deal off that. I will let you know, honestly, if I think that should be auctioned off. Where I think it should be auctioned off. Now, Jim is probably way up more on live auction stuff than I'm probably more on eBay stuff than he is. So yes, to talk to both of us is perfect, because you're going to get both sides of the equation there. But yeah, I'm like Jim. I abhor people that try to cut deals with people based on their.
They're always trying to take advantage. And
I'm not trying to buy your stuff. Believe me, I don't need any more stuff. I don't buy collections really anymore.
How do we go back down? How do we feel about bulk selling games to other merchants such as Noble? So here's what you're doing, right? Here's what you're doing. You're saying, I don't want to make as much money because I just want to deal with this one and done and walk away.
I just want it gone. Yeah.
And you're saying, I don't care how much more profit there is. I want to check. I want to feel comfortable, and why don't we kill Brandon Sanderson? We all know he's going to make a lot of money.
We all know he's a billionaire.
But what you have to understand is Noble Knight is going to hit that, and they are going to scrape every last dollar out of it because they've got the background to do it. They are going to lowball you in the right. They're going to offer you X, hoping you'll take it because it just widens their margin. And they'll absolutely pay you $100 for something and then turn around and put it up for $1,800 in their store. So let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story about a friend of mine who was a comic book buyer at a very large comic book store with a very high volume. Just like every week, every comic book store in the United States has some yahoo that walks into it with a long box under his arm and plops it on the counter and says, how much will you give me for this box? And he was the head buyer of this store, and it was a chain of stores. And this is how the conversation went. He wouldn't even open the box, and he'd say, I'll give you $50. And they would say, $50. And he says, absolutely. That's my per box price. And this is when long boxes were 300 comics. He says, I'll give you $50. And they'd say, you hadn't even seen what's in it. And he says, I don't care. I'll give you $50. And they would say, you don't know how it's in there. And he says, okay, fine. Open the box, go through it. And he'd say, I'll give you $50. And they would say, it's worth more than that. And he would say, here's my offer. And he would pull $50 in cash and put it on the counter and say, it's $50. That's all I'm offering you. and they would say there's two choices. They would say great, and they would take the 50 and run because they had usually stolen the comic books or whatever.
Right.
But then if they left, he would put the money back in the drawer, and the next day or later the same day, they would come back with a half full box of comics where they had gone to every other comic book store and sold the valuable comics.
Right.
And
Cherry
now
picked
wanted
them, yeah.
and wanted to see if they wanted anything else. And he would say, I will give you $5 for everything that's left in the box. And this sounds predatory, and I understand that it sounds predatory, but they would say, no, it's worth more than that. And he'd say, it was worth 50, but you sold the stuff I would have wanted, and now we're left with the garbage. I will give you $5 for the box and the comics. And what I'm probably going to do is throw most of the comics away and use the box for back issues. And there would be some back and forth until he would say, it's $5, yes or no. And probably half the time they would take the $5.
Sure.
And the other half of the time they would simply walk away and leave the box with the comics and not come back because they didn't want to carry it.
No, they didn't want to bring it back out. And they probably made more than $50 going around to their stores anyway. They figured they came out ahead, whatever.
That's right. And so the problem is that when you sell a collection to Noble Knight or somebody like that, you're never going to get what it's worth, and you have to accept that.
But there is and that's why I do what I do. And I tell people when they have a large collection, okay, look, you're going to make way more money if you sell this individually than if you just sell it as a lot.
Every time.
But it's going to require an investment in time and money. And a lot of people don't have the time and they don't have the money to do it. So you have to decide, is your time and money worth, let's say, I'm looking at your collection. I think it's probably worth, if you sold it piece by piece, it's probably worth $10,000. If you sell it as a lot, it's going to be worth $2,500. Is it worth your time to make that extra $7,000? If you think it is, go for it. You're going to have to learn how to ship stuff. You're going to have to learn how to list things. You're going to have to learn all these different things. If you don't have time to do it, yes, it probably, and I would always say, deal with a private dealer more than a Noble Knight, because Noble Knight's a conglomerate. And they're just going to, whatever rolls in, whatever. But if you can deal with a private dealer, they're probably going to give you more because they're going to, whoever gets it's going to turn it over. They're not probably keeping most of it. Anyway.
So here's a piece of advice, right? You've got a collection. You have a collection. If you make a list and you take a stab at eBay and you take every item and you go on eBay and you look at sold completed auctions, sort by highest to lowest, you'll start to
to do it. Mm-hmm.
Easiest way to do it.
Absolutely.
And you'll get an approximate.
Right there. Yes.
And then what you do is you say to yourself, okay, well, it's sold on eBay for $50. I'm going to offer this to my friends for $45, right? Friends and family, 10% discount.
Yeah.
So then make a list and you send it to your friends and say, I'm getting out of this part of the hobby. I no longer need Sparkly Unicorn Patrol and all of its supplements that rhymes with Pathfinder. So I'm going to get out. And this is what I would like. And do that with your friends first, because you'll be surprised. They'll be the guy that's like, I've always wanted that.
Yeah.
I've always wanted that. I've always wanted that.
And it's going to a good home. It's going to a good home. It's going to somebody that will use it, and they're not going to resell it probably. They're probably buying it to play.
It's going to go to well-loved.
It's going to make you feel good. Yeah, it's going to make you feel good.
If you bought it and you read it and you're comfortable selling it slightly used, add a discount to your friends, take the money and run.
Or if you happen to attend an auction like the Gary Con auction, like Game Hole auction, like the Gen Con auction, look through your collection, find the 10 nicest, most expensive type things, and people like Jim and I will give you advice on that. Put them in an auction. They will go for what they're worth. They will very rarely not go for what they're worth. And so if you don't want to take the time, I've told my wife this. If something happens to me, here's who you need to talk to. Just put it in the auctions. Put it in the North Texas auction. Put it in the Game Hole auction. I mean, just divide it up. Put some in the Gary Con auction. Put some in the game.
Well, now Gary Con goes only to charity.
That's right.
If you want to donate some things to sell to raise money for charity,
just to
that's
get rid
one
of it,
thing.
yeah. But there, and they'll cut you a check, and you'll get the check. No muss, no fuss. It's going to do much better than trying to schlep it to the bookstore where they're not going to give you the money, or schlep it to Noble Knight.
Oh God! And whatever you do, don't go to half price books. Half price books makes Noble Knight look like angels, and so let me talk about that. So there's a great question from somebody whose last name might rhyme with razor.
Oh my gosh.
So do you need to run selling the collection by your spouse? I think that's a tough question, right? So one of the things that I've done over the last couple of years is I've contracted what I'm willing to spend money on. I'm a Games Workshop guy, and so I can't keep up with everything 40K or Age of Sigmar or whatever. My love at Games Workshop, my self-imposed narrow slice of Games Workshop is Necromunda. I'm a Kingdom Death guy, and I'm a Kingdom Death. Yes, I'm going to keep up with Kingdom Death. But RPGs, I've cut back on my RPGs dramatically. But original art, I can't afford to buy original art. I have no job. So one of the things about this is spousal aggravation, right? We're all familiar with World of Warcraft, right? And how we always have a tank that draws aggro. Spousal aggro is something everybody has to manage, right? I'm sure Mike has stories. Has your wife ever tripped over something and given you the look?
Well, she's clearing out my office right now by herself and giving me the look every day. So yeah, I've had that look.
So that kind of stuff, like I know that we all have these weird hobbies, right? And everybody has to sort of balance what they're comfortable with or what they aren't comfortable with. And I think that although it's a humorous question, and I know she was laughing as a joke.
Oh, she's sending me private messages. Yeah, she's giving me a hard time already.
There's truth in that sentence, though, right? And we don't talk about this. We don't talk about this very often, which is if you've got a partner, if you've got a spouse, if you've got somebody, you can't expect this. You can't expect concealing or hiding things to go further without paying a bill at the end. And I'm really not a big fan of that.
And look, nobody loves your stuff like you love your stuff. And I tell people this over and over again. Jim and I have both seen dear friends with giant collections die over the past few years. I've had quite a few, and I won't go into names because I'll start crying probably. But and they have left their family a humongous task because their families know there is valuable items here. I do not want to just dump this stuff, but I don't have the time nor the knowledge to deal with it. And you have to realize this is what you're doing when you leave these gigantic collections behind. And you can tell your spouse and your kids and your grandkids, this is worth a ton of money. When push comes to shove and they are tired of looking at it, they're going to dump it all. They can't
to that point. To that point, and I think this is a good end of the discussion, my art dealer, Jerry DeLarie, had cancer for the better part of a year and oversaw the sale of 95% of his collection. He spent the last year of his life selling everything off to other homes, other dealers, private collectors. He sold it all. And he kept the top 5% for his wife to sell if she needed money. She did not need money. I've said this before. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. There's two phases in life. There's accumulation and dispersal. You want to be the person in charge of your dispersal, not somebody else.
Absolutely. Yes, Jim.
You know what it's worth.
Absolutely.
So everybody's dropping like flies. It's probably a good time to call it a night.
It's past 9 o'clock again. But we got Jim late though. We had to run over time because Jim was here. So, next week, Dirk Stanley, Eric.
Dirk is on for next week. Yes.
And then after that, we're hoping to have Rachel Marsh on the week after that. I'm actually going to have dinner with her tomorrow, Christy and I. So we'll talk to her tomorrow and see if I can get her on 2 weeks. And we'll talk to the daughter of Steve Marsh, who is getting her doctorate in engineering. Amazing girl, and just published her first module for Frog Out Games. So we'll talk to her in 2 weeks. But next week is Faraway Land and Dirk Stanley, which is an awesome game, and I can't wait to talk to Dirk about that.
Yeah, and I got to lock down Jason Anarchy Drinking Quest.
We got the Drinking Quest guy too. Yes.
Yeah, I'll lock him down for later on in the month.
Oh God, We're gonna sprain our livers that night.
We just might. We just might. And he's going to be giving away a whole set from the Kickstarter.
I'm ready for that Taking Quest. Oh my gosh, this thing gets smaller every week.
You need a new one, Mike.
Yeah, I think I do.
Okay. Well,
All right.
we'll have training wheels that night.
Well,
All
thanks,
right.
Jim, for showing up late, but we love having you here and appreciate you coming by. And thanks
Sorry about
everybody.
that.
Thanks everybody showing up. Is once again a very lively chat. We love lively chats because we'd much rather talk to you guys than just yak among ourselves.
Yeah, we do it pretty. Rachel's like, oh my god. She goes, you don't need a special guest. The three of you, that's at least 2.5 hours.
There you go. Well, that's right.
Not quite. By the way,
we'd
no
like to
live stream on
hear-
Friday. Live stream with Glenn will be on Sunday. So, Dungeons, Dragons, and Discourse Sunday at 8 p.m. Gamers Health Saturday at 8 p.m. No live stream for 2 days. Well, I might be on one tomorrow, but not this stuff. All right, folks. Catch you all later.
Be safe, be
Good night.
well.
God bless.
All the stuff that Eric always says, and Eric in the poker.
Yeah.
Woot.
I am.